everyone. I'd like to call the City Commission meeting for Wednesday, May 11th to order. It is 3:01. It's great to see everybody. We've got packed chambers. For the invocation today, it is my honor to invite my minister, Reverend Brad Clayton from Faith Presbyterian Church, to the podium for our invocation. If you will please rise and join us. Reverend, good to see you, sir.
Thank you all for inviting me. I invite you to pray with me. God of grace and God of love, we give you thanks for this community and for our neighbors. We give you thanks for the privilege to call Tallahassee our home. We thank you for those who serve our community every day, for those who keep us safe, for those who keep us healthy, for those who keep our city clean, and for those who educate our children. We also give you thanks for those who care for the most vulnerable around us, from the smallest child to the oldest adult, by feeding them and clothing them and giving them a safe place to live. We give you thanks for these public servants who have dedicated their lives to helping others. Each moment that they serve, we ask that you stand by their side, giving them wisdom and courage, endurance and care, humility and grace for their work. And when they face challenges, give them patience to listen. When their opinions differ, help them to find common ground. When they get frustrated, fill them with compassion for those in need, and remind them of their higher calling to love our neighbors as ourselves. Most of all, we pray that their work will inspire each of us to serve as well. Inspire us to help our neighbors in need. Inspire us to take action when we see someone hurting. Inspiring us to lift up the weak and brokenhearted. Inspire us to make Tallahassee a better place with our words and our deeds. We pray this all with gratitude for all that we have and all that we are, and with hope for a stronger future together. We pray this in the name of the one who created us and loves us and will never let us go. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, the American flag is to my right, your left. If you'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Once again, Reverend, thank you so much. It's great to see you. Promise to be in church on Sunday. I'll see you then. Tell the family you said hi. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a great meeting today. We do not have that packed of agenda, so I think we got plenty of time to take up the business before the City Commission. We do have a public hearing at 6 o'clock. So if we are not done with the general business, we will take a break. We will go to the publicly scheduled 6 o'clock public hearing, and then we will come back, but we will make sure that we take care of all the business for the City of Tallahassee. As I like to start every meeting, I encourage you to join me in setting the tone and setting the pace and being respectful and showing the world how Tallahassee does it in a civic-minded way. We're going to have a great meeting today. With that, Mr. Manager, do we have any agenda modifications?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. The attachment to item 5.03 was included in your agenda material.
Excellent. Also, when we get to policy formation and direction, I intend to take up 13.02 first, 13.03 second, and then 13.01, followed by 04, 05, 02, and 03. I don't think will take as long as the other one. So instead of making those individuals sit in the public and wait, we're going to go ahead and take up 1302, 03, and then come back to 01, and then 04 and 05. Any questions on the modifications? Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 3 proclamations for the day. Allison, do we have the Deputy Assistant Secretary on? He's on. Abena, he's on. Alan Williams, can you hear me, sir? Alan Williams.
I can hear you.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Can you hear me, Mayor?
I can. Thank you for joining us. All the way from Washington, D.C., many of you know that former Representative Alan Williams, that represented our community in the Florida House of Representatives, is now the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Housing and Urban Development for the Biden administration. For the first proclamation, he wanted to call in and participate because this is very exciting. I would also like to ask all representatives from the AHAC that I serve with, the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee that is here, Big Bend Continuum of Care, staff from the Housing Community Resilience Department in the City of Tallahassee. Everybody come on up. Abena, come on up. Dr. Kimball, come join us. This is exciting. All right, Deputy Secretary, are you with me? From the governing body.
Loud and clear, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. From the governing body of the City of Tallahassee, a proclamation. Whereas the City of Tallahassee, Florida is committed to ensuring that all residents have a safe and affordable place to live, and whereas the most effective approach to increasing the stock of affordable housing units is through regulatory flexibility, development incentives, and public-private partnerships, and whereas ending homelessness requires rapid rehousing into an affordable unit with few to no barriers and through tailored assistance and wraparound supportive services, and whereas House America, launched as a partnership between the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, the United States Interagency Council, and Homelessness, and communities to respond with urgency to address the crisis of affordable housing and homelessness, and whereas HUD and USIC are calling on local leaders to partner with them to use American Rescue Plan resources alongside other federal, state, and local resources to altogether rehouse 100,000 households experiencing homelessness across America and to add 20,000 new units of housing into the National Development Pipeline by December 31st, 2022. And whereas the City of Tallahassee is committed to working with HUD and all of our partners, as well as many local partners, to use available resources to increase the stock of affordable housing units for low-income households and to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring in our community. And whereas the city annually invests in homelessness prevention, permanent relocation, shelter operations, permanent supportive housing, street outreach, and rapid rehousing, and whereas the city has been a leading partner in establishing comprehensive emergency shelters for individuals, families with children, youth, and victims of domestic violence, and whereas the city has created a landlord risk mitigation fund to partner with local landlords to provide housing stability for individuals exiting homelessness, and whereas the city has implemented various development incentives and inclusionary housing ordinance, regulatory waivers to spur private production of affordable housing units, whereas the City Commission took early, bold action to commit $12.5 million of its American Rescue Plan allocation to urgently address affordable housing and homelessness in this community. Now, therefore, I, John Daly, by the authority vested in me as the mayor of the City of Tallahassee, proclaim the City of Tallahassee proudly joins House America and pledges to rapidly rehouse 200 homeless households and to add 2,200 affordable housing units, including 100 units for extremely low-income households, into the development pipeline by December 31st, 2022, in witness of each and every one of you, read into the record, signed by me, the Mayor, John Daly, dated May 11th, 2022. Deputy Secretary, thank you for joining us. I want to give you the opportunity to provide some comment as I'm providing this proclamation to Dr. Kimbrell Thomas on our staff. Alan Williams, thanks for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Daly. How you doing? In the City of Tallahassee, it is great to be with each and every one of you, at least virtually, to celebrate this great effort and the work that you're doing in the City of Tallahassee to address homelessness. Before I start, I also want to thank the entire commission, but in particular, Commissioner Williams-Cox, for her leadership on what she's doing. And as you know, here at HUD, we're partnering with mayors, city and county leaders, tribal nation leaders, and governors who use American Rescue Plan resources to rehouse at least 100,000 people experiencing homelessness, and to add at least 20,000 new affordable and permanent supportive housing units to address homelessness into the development pipeline by the end of 2022. To date, we've assisted leaders in 89 states, cities, counties, and tribal nations throughout America. Today, with Tallahassee joining, you are now number 90 in that effort. And I want to thank all of you who have partnered with us on this initiative and set rehousing and unit creation goals, and encourage all others throughout this great state and our nation to continue to join in on this effort as Secretary Marsha Fudge and President Joseph Biden addresses homelessness throughout the United States. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So I would like to explain, Tallahassee is part of a partnership with the federal government and many communities across the United States with the one shared goal of ending homelessness and providing affordable housing. It has been a top priority of the City Commission as established in our strategic plan. Very proud of the work that we're doing, although we have a lot more work to do. But it is my honor to present this proclamation to the men and women of the City of Tallahassee that do an absolutely fantastic job. Please join me. Dr. Kimberly Thomas, I'm going to ask you to come provide some comments, but thank you all for everything that you do.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Daley, respective commissioners. I can tell you since the Housing Act of 1937, this country realized the need for every American to have an opportunity for affordable housing. This particular proclamation has already given us that opportunity as we expand what we're currently doing. Usually in housing, there's like a three-pronged method of production, preservation, and protections. Well, the die has already been set with the City of Tallahassee and the Housing Department with respect to these methods. Number one, when it comes to production, what we currently have in stock, what's in the pipeline, we are producing at a rapid rate. We have more in the pipeline now in the last 2 years than we had in the previous 50, and we're very excited about it. You should give the City of Tallahassee. We have absolutely more in the pipeline in the last 2 years than we had in the previous 50 years. Y'all should applaud that. Geographically, what we're doing in all specters of this city and this county, but what we have with Habitat Humanity, what we're doing with our community land trust and taking student housing and also converting that into affordable housing, what we're constantly doing in the greater Frenchtown Southside CRA with lots that we have set aside for affordable housing. We are very excited that we will meet the goal of this proclamation without any sweat whatsoever, but the equity that we put in every single day in our office. When it comes to preservation, when it looks at home repair, safe homes, hardening those homes. We're coming into hurricane season, hardening those homes to make sure that we're prepared for those acute shockers that would happen through a hurricane. And when it comes to protections, the Landlord Mitigation Fund, what we're doing with legal services, we are already ahead of the game thanks to the leadership previously in this department and what I will continue to do. I have already set a new edict for the department with this mantra in mind. We're going to make the most vulnerable more valuable. And at this time, I'd like to give way for brief comments from Joanna Coleman for the Big Bend COC.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Thank you, Mayor Daley. On behalf of the Big Bend COC and all of our partners, as well as our individuals who are experiencing homelessness, we want to thank the City of Tallahassee. Thank you to Commissioner Williams-Cox for joining our board, for all of your staff, and we look forward to making a difference in Tallahassee and getting people housed.
AHAC will come forth now with a brief comment as well.
Hey everybody, Ian Waldick. I'm the Vice Chair of the City of Tallahassee Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. Unfortunately, our chair couldn't be here today, but I just wanted to take a brief opportunity to say thank you to the mayor. He sits on the AHAC with me, and thank you to the city commissioners. It's great to see us really putting some more stock into affordable housing in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's get a picture.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Once again, I want to thank Alan Williams, our homegrown Assistant Deputy Secretary of HUD, for joining us from Washington, D.C. He's doing a great job representing us. Next, I would
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
Next, I'd like to invite Jesse, Dr. Gabriella, come join me, please. And do we have other members of the Joint Committee on Bicycling that's with us? Come join us. How are you doing? I'm doing great. Come join me, Gabrielle. You do such great work in this community. Appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, from the governing body of the City of Tallahassee, a proclamation. Whereas for more than a century, the bicycle has been an important part of our lives of most Americans. And whereas today, millions of Americans engage in bicycling as an environmentally sound form of transportation, an excellent form of fitness and quality family recreation. And whereas the education of residents on the proper and safe operation of bicycles and motor vehicles is important to ensure the safety and comfort of all users. And whereas various cycling organizations and independent cyclists throughout our community are promoting greater public awareness of bicycle operation and safety education in an effort to reduce accidents, injuries, and fatalities. Whereas the City of Tallahassee has been named a silver-level bicycle-friendly community by the League of American Bicyclists. And whereas BikeTallahassee.com provides a host of information to help riders plan routes and cycle safely. And whereas in 2020, the Tallahassee-Leon County Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan was adopted by the Capital Regional Transportation Planning Agency Board to guide bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure development in the city. And whereas the Blueprint Intergovernmental Agency Build the Bike Route System project provides funding to implement projects from the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, allowing for increased bicycle infrastructure improvements in the Tallahassee-Leon County community. And whereas the city continues to invest in enhancing its bicycle infrastructure, including the construction of bike lanes along FAMU Way, a multi-use path along Weems Road, and a climbing bike lane on East College Avenue between Calhoun Streets and Franklin Boulevard. Now, therefore, I, John Daly, by the authority vested in me as the mayor of the City of Tallahassee, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2022 as Bike Month in Tallahassee and urge all citizens to participate by taking a bike ride to explore our beautiful community. In witness of each and every one of you read into the record today, May 11th, 2022. Gabriella, thank you so much for accepting this proclamation on behalf of the cycling community. A few words?
Thank you, Mayor Daley, and thank you, esteemed commissioners. On behalf of all cyclists in Tallahassee, those whose only means of transportation is a bicycle, those who use cycling to have exercise, thank you for all that you're doing, and I just encourage you to continue to fund those projects to help pedestrians and cyclists stay safe. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Take it. It's yours. Absolutely. All right, this is the fun one.
Yeah.
I want the family to come up. I want everybody here from Public Works. Come on up. Underground Utilities. Let's do this together. Ladies and gentlemen, the #1 public utility in the nation right here amongst us.
Yeah.
Come on up. I need all of you to keep your individual comments down to about 5 minutes each, or it'll be hours and hours and hours and hours. Just playing. Come on up. So proud of each and every one of you. You do such an amazing job. All right, so I got to ask. I don't see him. Is John Daly running around anywhere? Is he here? All right, now, y'all give him a high five for me. Bless that man. So, ladies and gentlemen, we actually have an employee in Underground Utility named John Daly, spelled the exact same way. If you can imagine the emails that he gets on a regular basis. Bless his heart. You send him my regards, will you? This is a fun one. Ladies and gentlemen, from the governing body of the City of Tallahassee, a proclamation. Whereas 2022 marks the 62nd annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association, Canadian Public Works Association. And whereas public works professionals plan, design, build, maintain, and operate the infrastructure, public facilities, and services that are vitally important to sustainable, healthy, resilient communities and contribute to the high quality of life enjoyed by residents. And whereas the support of an informed citizenry is crucial to the efficient construction, maintenance, and operation of public works programs, such as providing high-quality drinking water, collecting and treating wastewater, providing safe and efficient streets and sidewalks, providing beautiful parks and trail systems, providing reliable energy production and solid waste collection. And whereas the City of Tallahassee Public Works professionals were honored during the 2022 APWA Florida Chapter Public Works Expo in April, earning the 2022 Project of the Year Award for FAMU Way, Phases 1 through 3, roadway improvements and Capital Cascades Trail, Segment 3, in the Transportation $5 million to $25 million category. And whereas Tallahassee continually invest in its infrastructure to ensure reliable, safe, and effective services, including projects in fiscal year 2021 that invested $11.6 million in stormwater capacity enhancements, upgraded 7.7 miles of aging wastewater pipes, implemented an automated real-time water consumption analytics tool to alert customers of consumption anomalies, repaired more than 4,800 trip hazards on sidewalks, and implemented street enhancements on the south side totaling more than $1.4 million, among other efforts. I'm going to take a second there and say congratulations. And whereas, in addition to providing world-class services to our community every day, city employees, including public works personnel, serve our community by preparing for and responding to severe weather and other emergency events, illustrating the essence of this year's APWA Public Works Week tagline, Ready and Resilient. And whereas city crews have demonstrated their dedication and willingness to go above and beyond by traveling to other cities, including Lafayette, Louisiana, to restore vital services to communities impacted by Hurricane Ida. And whereas we celebrate the hard work and dedication of public works professionals here in Tallahassee and throughout the world, now therefore I, John Daly, by the authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Tallahassee, hereby proclaim the week of May 15th through the 21st as National Public Works Week in Tallahassee, and further encourage all citizens to recognize the contributions which public works officials make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. Read into the record and witness of each and every one of you, signed today by my signature, John Daly, May 11, 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking the #1 public utility in the nation, the men and women of the city of Tallahassee.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, City Manager, appointed officials. I just want to take a short minute to thank you so much for the recognition of what our Public Works employees do every day to maintain and support the quality of life that we all enjoy here in Tallahassee. This is just a small cross-section of the hundreds of dedicated men and women that work in underground utilities and public infrastructure, fleet management, community beautification, electric and gas, all of these folks working hard every day to make sure that we're providing the support that this community needs to meet their infrastructure needs. These are, in my mind, unsung heroes, and they do not often take the time to step back and reflect on their accomplishments, which makes this kind of recognition so much more special. So thank you for that. Also want to let you know that next Thursday, American Public Works Association will be holding its 26th annual Public Works Rodeo, in which we'll be bringing in public works teams from across the region for some fellowship and, maybe more importantly, a little friendly competition. So if you have the opportunity to stop out to the Southeast Farm on Thursday and watch our talented public works crews competing to bring home the hardware, that would be great. So, exactly, thank you. On behalf of your public works professionals, thank you all very much.
Excellent. Colleagues, y'all want to come down so we can get a picture taken together and whatnot? Steve, let me ask that y'all put us in position, and yeah, hey, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring home some hardware. What do you say, right? Yeah. All right.
Right here on 3, 1, 2, 3. All right.
Thank you. Good to see you, buddy. Looking good, man.
All right. Thank you all.
right, as we're getting settled. So, colleagues, seriously, that's a true statement. We got a gentleman in Underground Utilities, John Daly, and it's spelled the exact same way. And for years, I have laughed with him because, yeah, once in a blue moon, he'll get an email that's directed towards me that'll go to him, and he'll just simply reply, different John Daly.
Not me.
And once in a blue moon, men and women in public work, I get your emails too, because y'all accidentally send them to me, and I do the same thing and reply, wrong John Daly. You're looking for the real John Daly. And so he is a very good-natured. Thank goodness he has a good sense of humor while working for the city. But we certainly appreciate everyone. And like I said, the #1 public utility in the nation. Can't beat it. Good stuff. Okay, do we have any announcements to come before the body? Mr. Manager.
No, sir.
We'll take citizen input on the agenda items as they come forward. Do we have any appearances by city commission, appointed boards, committees, or other governments to come before us?
No, sir.
All right. We are on the consent agenda. Has anything been pulled off the consent agenda?
No, sir.
Move consent.
Second.
All right.
Mayor, you do have one speaker on consent.
Okay, before we move forward with the motion, let's go ahead and take public comment on the consent agenda.
Speaker Stanley Sims, as he comes forward, I'll let speakers know that as we take each item, speakers will be called and we'll have 3 minutes for comments. The light in front of the mayor will be green and then we'll turn yellow at 2.5 and then 3 when your time has expired. If you give your name and address, you can begin.
Name and address for the record, please.
Mayor, my name is Stanley Sims. I'm at 1320 Avondale Way. And I know this is about an extension of contract for beautification of Tallahassee, but I would like to take this moment personally to echo my choir for our beautification staff. As you just said, we are the #1 team in the nation. It's just sad that our #1 team is not making $15 an hour while we have given $60,000 and $23,000 raises to the top tier. These are the individuals that cut our grass in the hot, blazing sun, not who sit through a meeting in an air condition in nice clothes. These are the people that come out, pick up my dirty, nasty trash can and skin it off. They do an exceptional job. That's why I stand here. I appreciate them. And what's really sad about this, according to the demographics, majority of the city employees that are not making $15 an hour, they are your neighbors, City Commissioner Curtis Richardson and Diane. They are your neighbors. And they are being told to wait to 2025 so that we can make sure we have enough money. People say you know a man's integrity and his character by his checkbook. We said some beautiful words 5 or 10 minutes ago about those, the least of these. How God measures, your pastor was here today. God measures what we do not for the ones who got it, but for the ones who ain't got it. Inflation. I drive a F-150 95 2 tanks, $125 to fill that up. I went to the store last night. My wife's gonna kill me for telling our business.
2.5 minutes.
They get a bag of onions, and Commissioner Manlow, I thought I didn't need but about $3 or $4. Well, a bag of onions is $4.99. So I had to panhandle in Publix to get up the change. Let's think about the least of these. Thank you so much for hearing me out with decency and respect. God bless you.
All right, do we have any other public comment?
No other speakers on consent.
We're on the consent agenda. Remind me, Mayor Pro Tem.
Move consent.
Okay, properly moved by Commissioner Williams-Cox, seconded
by Commissioner Porter.
Seconded by Commissioner Porter. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0. Okay, we are on 11.01, the Downtown Improvement Authority reappointment.
Yes, sir, Mayor.
Mr. Clerk.
Mayor, item 1101 is a request to approve the reappointment of Cynthia Tunnicliffe to the Downtown Improvement Authority. She has a term which expires on May 31st and is eligible and interested in being reappointed.
Excellent. Any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
All right, it's been properly moved by the Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a second to the motion? Second.
Yes.
Seconded by Commissioner Matlow. Thank you for your service on the Downtown Improvement Authority as well. See no further comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0. Do we have any introduction of ordinances to come before us, Madam Attorney? Okay, we're on policy formation and direction, and like I said, we are going to take up 13.02 first, then 13.03, and then come back to 13.01. That'll take a little bit more time. So let's go to 13.02, which is the donation, the generous donation from Prime Meridian Bank. I'm going to turn it over to you,
Yes, sir.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item seeks your approval to receive a $12,000 donation from Prime Meridian Bank. As I mentioned earlier, I like it this way better than the other way, where people are donating money for good causes in our community, and we're very appreciative. We're recommending that the City Commission accept and appropriate the donation in the amount of $12,000 to benefit the Tallahassee Future Leaders Academy. That's our summer youth program that's done so well for the current fiscal year. Dr. Kimball Thomas is the leader of that program from staff, among other things that he does, and he's here to introduce Mr. Dixon's team from Prime Meridian Bank. Dr. Thomas.
Mr. Sammy Dixon and your leadership team, thank you so much for joining us and for this donation. Year in and year out, you all do an amazing job.
Again, Mayor and Commissioners, thank you, City Manager. It is a wonderful privilege and opportunity when you have the opportunity to continue to shape and form the idealism of our young people in this community. Why private and public partnerships are so important. And we have a lot of partners, as you can see in our expansion of what we've been doing in the last several years with what's also happening next. But a steady person in that partnership has certainly been Prime Meridian Bank. And before I call Mr. Sammy Dixon, the President and CEO, to come forth with some words and a presentation, I want to introduce our young people that we have with us, our ambassadors for this coming program. They were ambassadors as well as last year. Kobe Roos. Kobe, take a bow. Yeah.
All right.
Amaya Wayman. I think Amaya, if I'm not mistaken, you led that project at Rickards High School that has changed the lives of a lot of young women in this community. You could be commended for it. Thank you.
Fantastic.
We have our human service analyst who also assisting with the program, Mr. Tim Nelson.
All right, Tim. Hey, Tim.
Dr. Tara Hulse couldn't be here. She's at a conference learning how to do more of this as we go forth in the years. We want to thank Mr. Dixon. He has staff here with him. I'll let him do those introductions and then the presentation. Thank you so much, Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Thank you, commissioners, for allowing us to do this. We've been involved with this since 2018, been the main sponsor since 2019. I cannot take credit for this. We've had 2 students every summer since 2018, with the exception of COVID year. But we would not be here without Misha Ware and Candace Hopkins as part of our team. So we just want to thank you. We can give exposure to these kids and help them see things going into the future. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd recommend if you'd entertain a motion, that I think they could present the sizable check to us.
I think so. Heaven forbid, is there any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
Okay, excellent. It's been, I'll make the motion and unanimously second the motion for the acceptance.
Yes.
For the record, seeing no further comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously 5-0. Thank you so much. Sure. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
I wanted to, come on, I'll
get
just
one
talk while
photo.
you're doing this.
I want to stand up.
You want us to stand?
I wanted to mention that Amaya is a student at Rickards High School, and she is also one of the women that we're supposed to be watching.
Yes.
You know, so we're watching you, Amaya. We see you, and you're doing great things. Keep it up. So come closer.
She did the period project.
Girl flow.
Yeah. Good to see you again, Amaya.
And Mr. Mayor, I would also add that yesterday I was shopping at Piggly Wiggly, getting eggs, and one of the young lady who rang me out recognized me from the TIFLA program.
Oh, wow.
And she asked me, did I speak at the TIFLA program? And I told her I did at their awards celebration. And she shared with me that was she was at her part-time job at Piggly Wiggly. So and I think she's applied to be a part of TIFLA again this year.
Excellent.
Dr. Thomas. So we have some repeats, and that's awesome. So just wanted to mention that it's working.
Excellent. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have comments as well? Okay, excellent. All right, we're on item number 13.03.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item also involves our TIFLA program, in this case, a partnership with Goodwill Industries of the Big Bend. We're seeking the Commission's approval to establish the partnership between Goodwill Industries of the Big Bend Career Campus Office and the City of Tallahassee's TIFLA program to provide training and educational services proposed. Dr. Thomas is here. I'd like him to give just an overview, kind of to describe the nature of the training and the program of the partnership and seek the Commission's approval on this item. Dr. Thomas.
Dr. Thomas?
Again, Mayor, respective Commissioners, City Manager, this particular partnership expands the narrative that we have with our, again, private-public partnerships. It will give our students opportunities to go to the Career Center. Tanya Gavin is here. She's the Community Career Center Manager, and she can tell you a little bit more about that expansion. But it gives them an opportunity to look at careers, give them an opportunity to expand their knowledge about what will they do next upon graduation. It will give them the training. They will also do some financial literacy. We have a MOU that also established that they will also be doing first aid and CPR, press the chest as well. So it gives that opportunity for students not only to learn more, but also to potentially save lives in this neighborhood. We're excited about the partnership. Goodwill is a great partner. You know, they also partners with us with the anchor partner in their Ignite program, and having those who have been formerly incarcerated in Temple also get training. And Tanya, you'll come forward. I'd like you to have some comments.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I've always enjoyed the TFLA, now TIFLA, that's what we're calling it. For 3 years, it was a wonderful experience to watch it grow. And now being back involved with them is fantastic. We provide what we call essential skills in life. Some people call that soft skills. We provide the experience of doing things at a self-paced process through the time period that they get to do some training. And then, of course, as we discussed, the Red Cross training with adult and pediatric first aid, CPR, and AED training, of which is awesome. So we'll have a good time helping with that. Any questions?
Excellent. Any questions? Do we have any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you so much. Recommended action is for option number 1.
Move option number 1.
Second.
As recommended by staff. Mr.
Been
Mayor.
properly moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Porter. Seeing no further comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes 5-0. Thank you so much. Okay, colleagues, we are back on 13.01. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, sir. This item is an update on our clean energy plan. And as you know, in 2019, you adopted a resolution setting a goal for Tallahassee, being one of the first in the nation in the state of Florida to establish a goal to be 100% renewable by 2050, with significant midterm goals such as electrifying our fleet and our buses. There's been a considerable amount of work that's been done on this plan. As you know, it involves heavily on community feedback to vision where we want to head. It's complicated. These decisions will be very, very important and influential on our future. We want to give an update tonight and seek any input that you have for us. Today, Tony Guillen, our General Manager of Electric, is here. David Byrne, an Assistant General Manager of Electric, is here. And Michael Olson, our Clean Energy Plan Manager. He's done a lot of heavy lifting. I know you've seen Michael before, and a lot of people have interacted with him. He's done a yeoman's job in terms of interacting and gathering feedback. And we're real pleased to be able to present this update to you tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Michael for a presentation.
Mr. Manager, thank you for that introduction. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, appointed officials, thanks for the opportunity. Before I begin, I just wanted to comment on the great energy in the chambers today. I don't have a proclamation or a check to offer up, but I'm real spirited about this topic. And I do have a slide deck that will help guide the discussion. And that's important in that, as City Manager mentioned, this is a complex and fairly broad effort, and that's our clean energy planning process. So I'll give tech support half a second. There we go.
There we go.
So in this update today, it's been probably just shy of a year since I was before you with the initial update. So there's a lot to cover. I'm just going to touch on the highlights. At the core is the planning efforts. I want to share with you a little bit about the study that's involved, the feedback we're getting from the public. But before I jump right into the planning piece, I wanted to share with you some of the activities and accomplishments we've made over the past year as we continue along this clean energy journey as we continue the planning process. And then I'll end with just a quick wrap up of what to expect next in this piece. So for clean energy activities, I'll start with where City Manager kind of teed it up. The resolution set forth a handful of interim goals for the city to achieve, one of which is all city municipal buildings to be operated with clean renewable energy. We met that goal 2 years ago, in large part due to our participation in Tallahassee Solar Program. That's our solar fields out at the airport. If you weren't already aware, earlier this year, we fully subscribed the airport. So we've got over 1,600 residential participants, a handful more of small, medium commercial, and then a decent number of our large commercial users. So
if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in because that is huge. And it's something that I'm very proud of. And I know that when we do our public speaking, we remind people, were we do you know off the top of your head, were we the first city in Florida to basically put the entire municipal portfolio on clean renewable? I know there's others that have done it since, Kissimmee being one, but were we the first?
Mr. City Manager, is that your recollection?
We were the first.
We're
Yes,
not
sir.
the only now. But
Right.
We were the first, others followed. You mentioned Kissimmee. They were close behind us, but we were situated because of the solar farm to be able to do it first. Yes, sir.
But the size between us and the city of Kissimmee is considerable. I mean, we are much larger, and it's very impressive that we have been able to accomplish that goal.
And we're just getting started on that. So the other interim goals touched on the transportation side of city operations. Star Metro has made some significant enhancements. As you know, about a third of the bus fleet is all electric. I believe there's plans for 3 more electric buses by the end of this year. In addition, the team is in the process of designing a central bus charging depot that's solar-powered, state-of-the-art for this emerging fleet. On the fleet front, continued progress there as well. I think we're closing in on 50-plus light-duty all-electric vehicles and a similar number of hybrid vehicles, as well as a charging infrastructure to keep that fleet moving, and kind of pivoting to our role or space in building out a public infrastructure. We've got charging stations at Cascades, plans to implement charging at Renaissance, Clayman Plaza, as well as we're in the next stages of our DC fast charging kind of canopy. What's the way to put it? The pilot program we brought before the commission last year to begin to offer that high-speed charging to those customers who don't otherwise have access to charging at home. Maybe they rent or they don't have access charging at their office or workspace. So as we look to build out this infrastructure to quell any fears with range anxiety and all, we're continuing to make those efforts. But perhaps more exciting is what's happening in the community. 2 years ago, around 2019, we averaged about 10 applications for rooftop solar a year. Last year, that jumped to 300 applications, and we're seeing no slowdown in that. In fact, staff has sort of reorganized to be able to keep up with that net metering workload. What's interesting, though, is if you look at a map at where the solar is happening, you'll see it's a pretty decent spread across our community. But if you drill down, there are certain neighborhoods, certain communities that are underrepresented. And that's where the next bullet comes in. An effort started in the community, led by Rethink Energy Florida, assembled a diverse team to include some of us within city staff, neighborhood leaders in Bond, Griffin Heights, Frenchtown, as well as solar financiers and researchers, bring together an effort to go into these neighborhoods to understand, well, what are the barriers to solar adoption in these underserved neighborhoods? What are the potential ways to get over those hurdles? So this is an effort actually happening at the grassroots. It's happening at a time that's great for us from a planning perspective. It'll give us insights into types of policies and program recommendations we bring back. And on top of that, the U.S. Department of Energy thought it innovative enough that they awarded the team grant funds through their Solar Energy Innovation Network, which brings together a handful of other cities that are working in this space to promote adoption of clean energy technologies across the community. So we're excited to see that effort move forward, and we'll continue to report progress on that. As you know, we've had a robust and continue to have a robust demand-side management or energy efficiency program, continuing to see good number of requests for our home energy audits, our rebates, grants, incentives, and that's part of this clean energy journey. And Mr. Mayor, when I made brief comments during the retreat earlier this year, you had encouraged continued collaboration, partnership with our local research community. And happy to announce that just recently, through an FSU collaborative collision, we were awarded some funding, not the city, FSU, to look at reliability, resiliency of our efforts in light of moving towards clean energy, bringing in more renewable energy. And there are countless, not countless, but there are other examples where we're partnering with FSU's Center for Advanced Power Systems and other groups there. So we're continuing to charge, take advantage, and leverage the talent we have here to promote clean energy. So now, pivoting from activities to the planning piece, at the core of the planning effort, you may recall from prior update, is this study. It's a bit clunky to say. It's an Energy Integrated Resource Planning Study, or EIRP. It's probably even clunkier to try to describe. And this graphic doesn't necessarily do it justice, but I'd like to break it down for you so you can understand how is it that we're assessing what is viable for our system here in Tallahassee. So as you know, the electric utility is a lot like any other industry. It's a supply and demand game. In this case, the utility supplies energy and our electric customers consume that energy. What's different, what's unique, and what's important to understand, though, in the electric utility is that dynamic is instantaneous. We don't have customers waiting in line for our product. When they need it, they get it. When they don't, we dial it back. We also, at the current moment, don't have the ability to load extra energy onto our grid to ride out those ups and downs. So it is a balancing act in every moment of the day, of the week, of the month and season. Commissioner.
Thank you. I was just wondering if you could elaborate on that, so we don't have the ability to generate additional energy in moments like that. And I remember from my orientation, I've tried to cut back on Sundays. Usually I do everything. I do my laundry, I do my dishes, and how that can strain our system. So can you explain how that works?
Yes, and I appreciate Commissioner Porter asking that question. I may have oversimplified in my statement. So we have the capacity to meet the demands of our system today and into the foreseeable future. Our planning future is 10 years out. So as demand increases and decreases, our power plants can meet that need. What I was alluding to, though, was this idea that we've got to follow that load, that we don't have energy storage in our system at the moment. And this becomes an important concept when we start to pivot towards clean energy resources, in particular solar or even wind, which is more intermittent. And our studies are suggesting as we introduce more of those intermittent sources, we're going to need a way to sort of smooth out that intermittency, and that's where storage comes in to play. So the distinction here between this supply and demand is, and it gets to where the city manager was mentioning, it's complex. It's not as easy as just substituting parts and pieces out. At every moment, we have to maintain that balance. And so that's what this study seeks to do. For the past year, our consultant team has developed a model of our entire electric grid such that we can now begin to run different mixes of supply resources. So how would our grid operate if we had this much solar on it? How about this much? Similarly, on the demand side, as we begin to see more and more electric vehicles, maybe home automation, or even rooftop solar on our system, how does that begin to change the demand side? So the future of our grid is dynamic, it's moving. And so in this study, we're trying to understand basically that dynamic between our ability to supply and meet that demand under these new clean renewable energy resources and evolving demand needs. And it's really a study of the robustness. And in the end, that's what we're measured on, that reliability, robustness. And so preliminary findings are just coming out now. We haven't had a chance to kind of fully digest, but what we hope to learn from this study is to understand, well, what mix of clean energy resources makes sense, supports a robust system in Tallahassee, and what mix of this demand side management piece needs to come into play. And understanding that, we can begin to then pivot to, well, what policies, programs, and such do we need to bring that about? We were fortunate enough this past year to have the expertise of the National Renewable Energy Laboratory to assist in this planning process. And this was brought forth from Sierra Club and the Energy Foundation. The NREL staff have developed over the years a number of tools based on county level data, but a number of tools to help communities across the nation understand what those mixes and those opportunities might be, both from sort of a clean energy, but also from equity, a standpoint and such. And we were able to use the assistance from NREL to kind of ground truth what we're seeing in our own studies at IRP studies. So feel fortunate that a number of resources are kind of coming in play to help guide the city's planning. And then finally, in that study, in our planning efforts, it is in large part guided by what we're hearing from the public. That was our direction from the resolution. This past year, we held a second round of what I'll just call public engagement. We initiated it back in the fall, and it ran several months. It entailed a number of community events, town halls of a sort. We held them virtually, also in person. But we also began to have conversations with stakeholders, with neighborhood leaders, community organization leaders, business leaders, and we organized them in different themes or themed charrettes. So one group may have looked at the economic development side of clean energy. Another group may have looked at community and equity issues. Another group represented our large energy users, and a final group was our green building folks. So within those different stakeholder charrettes, it gave us additional perspectives to help sort of guide our modeling and planning process. There are two additional stakeholder groups that we're anticipating creating, one around transportation, and finally, from Commissioner Williams-Cox, we're creating a stakeholder group around youth and youth advocates. And we've enlisted the Gen Cleo group, some of which have joined us today, as well as other youth in the community, to help us understand the young adult voice in this planning process. The graphic shown here represents the sort of what's to be expected next. So last year when I made the update, we had just finished doing an online survey where we found fairly unanimous support around clean energy. As we start these stakeholder discussions and more detailed community discussions, what we're finding is, as we ask, well, how would you participate or how would you like to see it come out? Then the opinions start to diverge. Some are very interested in electric vehicles, maybe rooftop solar, some less likely. What this indicates for us is that more information is needed, more discussion, and more communication. So finally, kind of bringing this all home, we hope to finalize that EIRP study this summer, vet it through our internal steering committee, which is made up of leaders within the utility and larger city departments. Once that's finalized, we're going to pivot the conversation out to the public. And we're going to say, here's what we've learned. What do you think? And what would it take to move us forward? So that later this fall, should all go according to plan, I can bring back to you all sort of a more meaningful summary, one that begins to identify, here are some viable pathways forward for our community. Here's ways the community recommends or suggests we might get there in terms of policy program recommendations. And then I'll just close with just the note, and it'll just be the beginning. That'll be the starting point. This is something that, while it will be years in the making, we'll revisit periodically to see where technologies advance, where the economics of those technologies. So what we'll be bringing back to the commission is what we know and what we could understand at this stage. So with that, I'll give the floor back to Mr. Mayor for questions, discussion.
Great presentation. First, let's check in. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do have one speaker, Mayor.
Okay, we'll get into our discussion as soon as we have public comment.
Okay. The one speaker we have on this item is Kurt Bender. And I do have an attachment that was provided, so we'll make that part of the record as well.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
Kurt Bender, 5403 Sombra del Lago Drive. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Wonderful presentation. Thank you very much for the information. And on February 20th, 2019, agenda item number 19R04 is where you all passed the Clean Energy Plan 2050. In that, there was a specific quote that all excess energy, any unavoided use of non-renewable energy will be balanced by the export of renewable energy to other communities. And this is why I'm here. I'm going to say something outrageous just to get your attention. The city of Tallahassee is sitting on potentially millions of free dollars that will cost us little to get. Two keywords, potentially and little cost. Every megawatt of energy generated is attributed with one renewable energy credit. This is in the contract that the city signed with the solar farm developers. Clearly, the city's entitled to all the renewable energy credits, but there's a caveat. It doesn't vest to the city unless one of two things happen. One, the city exercises the purchase option to buy out the solar farm, which is not good. The deal we have now is pretty good. Or number two, we use a voluntary renewable portfolio standard to unlock those credits. So what the contract says is that all those credits go into a bank, and the only way it comes out of the bank is if the city buys the solar farms or we need it for a renewable portfolio standard. About every state except for about 7, including Florida, doesn't have a renewable portfolio standard, whether it's voluntary or mandatory. Because we have the pleasure of owning our own utility companies, with a stroke of a pen, you all could implement a voluntary renewable standard below the current output of renewable energy portfolio. So if 10% of our energy is renewable, set the standard at 5%. Therefore, it's arguable that we need those credits to meet our own voluntary renewable portfolio standard. It's in the contract that we signed 4-1, and then 4-1-1, and then 4-1.2. 4-1 talks about the renewable energy credit, it defines it. 4-2 says, I quote, the parties acknowledge that currently effective or future legislation, that's y'all, regulation or voluntary program, voluntary, may create value in the renewable energy credits. Because even though we can't sell it here in Florida, we could sell it in California, we could sell it in New York, and it's literally just sitting there, and I call this a rebate. Because if there's no action by you all at the end of the period with the solar farm developers, those credits revert back to the solar farm developers. Look it up, there are finance companies out of New York where there is a RPS, and they're just gonna take those credits from us here in Tallahassee, sell it back in New York, and then we're gonna lose a bunch of money. Listen to this, I've made so many emails and requests, I want one question. Since the solar farm 1 came online, we know there's 2, how much megawatts of energy did the city produce? You can take that number, translate it to 1-to-1 ratio, megawatt to renewable energy credit, and multiply that by the rate of renewable energy credits in states that need them. And it's very simple. You'll see it in the memorandum.
I need you to wrap up your comments, please.
Thank you. You will all receive a memorandum I sent to the City Commission on May 28th, 2020.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thanks, Kurt. Any other comments?
No other speakers on this item.
All right. Do we have any questions or comments from commissioners?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Mr.
Mayor Pro Tem, and then Commissioner Williams-Cox and Commissioner Porter.
Wonderful
Commissioner Mallow.
presentation. I think it's certainly clearly demonstrates our commitment to clean energy and that we are a leader in that respect, and I think we'll probably accomplish our goals sooner than 2050, given the rate and trajectory that we're on. The question that I have, has anyone followed up with Mr. Bender on the comments that he just made? Mr. City Manager, I don't know if that question is appropriate to go to you or?
Commissioner, I don't know. We can get you more information about it. I will tell you this. So it was always contemplated that any kind of renewable energy credit, that we would preserve the value. That's why Mr. Bender cited it in the contract. That was intentionally done by us, our city team, our attorneys, our experts. So if they had value, that we could exercise that value. When it talked about legislation, though, that envisions national or state level or regional level legislation that actually creates markets that really puts these things in value. We've seen it in the West, we've seen it in the Northeast, and so we've intentionally reserved these for our benefit. And I will tell you that Mr. Bender raised the point that we will reach a decision point at some point sooner rather than later in terms of, do we want to buy the solar farms from the owner today? Right now, we do it through third-party contract because that was the most appropriate structure to manage financial risk, technology risk, operating risk. It has worked very well, but I would not rule out the idea that the city of Tallahassee may be the better owner at some point. And so all of these things were put in place to preserve value for our system. So Mr. Bender is exactly right in terms of value and us trying to position ourselves for taking advantage of being an early adopter. I'm not sure if anybody's communicated. I'm not sure if there's been any dialogue on that, but that's, we're familiar with the topic, and it was intentionally done to preserve the value, so one day we can exercise that to its fullest extent for the city of Tallahassee.
Commissioner Williams-Cox? Sure.
Thank you. And I want to thank Mr. Bender as well. I met with him just before this meeting and encouraged him to come and go on record with his statement. I would like to, as someone, and Mr. Bender shared with me, self-reportedly, he's an attorney himself. And so I would feel comfortable, if you all feel comfortable, with Mr. Bender and our attorneys getting together to see where there is potential and opportunity, because if we have an asset that we can realize, because we got a budget meeting coming up soon, and I understand we're looking for some money. So if we got an opportunity where we have some assets that we might be able to liquidate, then I'm interested in that. You know, let's sell something to California or New York. I'd love to. So if we could, someone get with Mr. Bender to make, have some conversation to see what we can do to make that happen. And I want to say also, thank you for your presentation. You did it slow so I could understand it. I appreciate that. One of the things, though, that I saw was that I know there's an FSU collaboration, and as you know, I'm a very proud alumnus of Florida A&M University, and our president is an environmental scientist by training and trade. And so I would hope that we would also look for some collaboration over at FAMU, because FAMU has farms, not only in Tallahassee, but in Gadsden County and in other places, like Brooksville, and also have have property that they are using for solar farms down in Brooksville, I believe. I think Dr. Gaines, former president, is down there managing that. So I would encourage us to reach out to those entities as well, to make sure that we're doing all that we can because FAMU is a vital part of Tallahassee as well, to make sure we're doing that also. I also wanted to say thank you for calling out my friends of the Clio Institute, because we have been having some very serious conversations, and I know you all have been as well. These young people are not playing when it comes to climate and renewable energy, and are to be taken seriously. So I'm glad that you're doing that. I promised them something. I owe them something. I promised it in 30 days. I'm behind schedule. I will go ahead and admit that. But following today, I will get back on task and get back to you on what I promised that I would get back to you on, okay? So thank you all for being here in Chambers today, and thank you for leading the youth advocacy effort, because as they said to me in a meeting, they're the ones that's going to inherit whatever it is that we're leaving behind, and I want them to be a part of what we're doing so that what they hand off to the next group, they will have been a part of preserving. So thank you for what you're doing and making sure that our youth and our future are included in these discussions, as well as thank you for realizing that in some of our minority communities, there's a need for education on solar and how it can impact their utility bill, as well as what they can do to tap in to be able to use solar to their advantage as well. And it's not something to fear, but it's something that we need to just have more information on. I encourage you that when we share this information with anyone, that we keep it at a level that they can understand, all of us, because that's why I was saying you said it slow so that I could understand it, because you scientists get real technical and you get into your jargon, and we don't necessarily understand all of that. but you did a great job today, and I was able to follow. So when we're talking to our public, let's make sure we're breaking it down in a way that they can talk about it at the dinner table and not be run out of the house.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Olson, for the presentation, for all the work you and your team are doing. Thank you also to Mr. Bender. You know, we've met a couple of times, we've met before, and so I'm glad that you spoke today and that we can revisit this. I have just a few questions. There were some really good ideas that were collected from the charrettes and the public engagement, and I'm wondering how those comments will be integrated into the plan. And, you know, some of it is related to the plan, but not totally related, and would involve sort of other departments. And I just want to make sure that that stuff doesn't just get lost. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts at this point for, you know, how we're going to move forward with some of those ideas.
Absolutely, Commissioner. And it's a lot. It's a lot of content, and so we've been in the process of archiving it, but it's not enough to just heard it. How do you then begin to assemble it and analyze it and then use it to kind of shape our planning efforts? So I can speak to what we've done to date. In large part, what we've heard through the first round last year and the second round this more recently has been in large part to shape the inputs and assumptions around that IRP modeling. So what is the appetite for rooftop solar or other renewable energy? In these community forums and charrettes, we heard additional ideas such as waste to energy, waste incineration. We even heard folks ask about, well, what's the role of nuclear and small modular reactors? So we used a lot of what we've heard to date to kind of help shape the engineering, the technical piece of it. I think the more interesting and perhaps more nuanced discussions will come up, though, later this summer as we then begin the arduous task of sort of distilling the technical down to meaningful messages that we can carry a conversation around. And I think what we've heard to date is going to help us shape how we message that, what vocabulary. And I did a great disservice in my presentation for not calling out the Tally 100 Together coalition. But within that larger coalition, there is a team that they call themselves a technical committee, but they'll admit that they're a diverse group. But I meet with them on a regular basis, and I use them as sort of a proxy for the community to say, okay, do you get what we're looking at? What questions do you have? So the sum of the public engagement, the sum of the interactions with stakeholder groups, with Tally 100 groups, to date has kind of shaped where we are today and will shape how we position the conversations this summer. What we do then to kind of archive and catalog the full of it, we'll have it. And I don't know if that's sort of where you were going with your question as well, but that's what came to mind in terms of response. At each stage, it's shaped the next upcoming stage. And this final stage is that kind of deep dive discussion from which, from this slide, one of the outcomes is some feedback to this body as to, well, what policy program recommendations kind of tested well, would be popular, would be necessary. Not to hear it from me or not to hear it from how other utilities might fashion them, but to actually hear it from the public. To that extent, though, we haven't fashioned that conversation yet. That'll come a little bit later once we wrap
Okay, thank you. And I'm glad you mentioned the Tally 100 Technical Committee. One thing that they, and I know you're aware of this, that they brought to my attention from their review of the GDS, study.
The consultant study.
The consultant study are some of the assumptions that they make.
Right.
And I'm not necessarily asking you right now to go through those assumptions, but I want to make sure, or I want to ask where we are. Eventually, I would like some answers, not that you haven't already provided them. I have not asked you for them.
Right.
Before we get too far along where, it's kind of, we can't go back and reevaluate those assumptions. So is that something we're still evaluating, or where are we with that?
Yes, so in two respects, as those conversations continued throughout that sort of study period, I had conversations with the consultant to kind of debate the merits. And as you might imagine, you get 5 people around the table to try to predict, well, what is the electric vehicle adoption rate going to be in 2040, 2045, 2050? Car manufacturers are claiming by 2030, 2035, that's all they're going to offer. That would then maybe suggest, hey, our forecasts should be showing a decent, if not 100% EV penetration by 2040, 2045. But then you look at other national studies that aren't quite getting us there. So in the planning space, we use sensitivity. So we use kind of where we think it might land, a high adoption rate, a low adoption rate. I have shared those with a consultant. At some point, the consultant will provide a report. So in addition to the findings, all the assumptions that they landed on, the ones we might agree with, disagree with, or community members, and then we can take that and we can decide what to do with it. I will offer up, though, that it is my estimation that a lot of the disagreement happens in those out years. That is already a bit cloudy, and it speaks to this idea that, well, every 3 to 5 years, let's just do a refresh of what our assumptions are. So I fully expect what we come back with to you all later this fall is something that helps guide our efforts over the next few years, that we feel, hey, this plays out in our planning, and then sort of a glimpse at what the full pathway to 2050 will be, with some fuzziness to say we just have to see which technologies win out, which ones prove out to be more economic. And those are market forces and technological forces that are beyond FAMU, FSU, City at Tallahassee. So I don't mean to characterize the debate with Tally 100 Technical Committee as purely being those outliers, but to say that it has been shared with the consultant ultimately, then the consultant decides, okay, based on everything, this we're going to lock in. And then as a community, we'll take the consultant's input and we'll say, this is what it means to us. Now, here's what we're going to do.
Right, and that makes sense. And those sensitivities or those projections, of course, they're influenced by the market, but there's also the policy, and we can look at them and say, okay, do we want to move this a certain way, and how do we incentivize that or disincentivize that? So that'll all be interesting to explore. I just have 2 more questions. One is, are you working with, the Florida League of Cities or with other staff that are sort of keeping an eye on what's happening in the legislature with, we've seen attempts to sort of, just regulate or, influence sort of what we do with and we are unique because we're a publicly owned utility. So is that something that you have on your radar?
Yeah, so with respect to the Florida League of Cities, or there's a whole number of groups that I kind of lump into the term stakeholders. So, Commissioner, I can't speak specifically to maybe the last conversation. We do, as a municipal utility, have the Florida Municipal Electric Association, FMEA, that has a legislative type body to keep us abreast, at least from a public utility perspective. But then just the networks we've built during this planning process have kept those types of efforts on our radar screen. Whether we have a position or a voice in it or not, I feel like we are networked to kind of know and anticipate. And I think what you're referring to is the net metering
Right.
policy.
No, and that sounds great. I mean, I assume the answer was yes. I just sort of wanted to ask to hear the extent of it. And then my final question is, obviously, I am not a scientist. I have enjoyed, to the people from Clio in the room, the work that they do with bringing it down to earth, training people. And, one thing that I know is time is of the essence. This really is an emergency. And that although our goal is 2050 and we have intermediary goals, my understanding is, every degree of warming causes more irreversible damage. And so my question is, are we thinking through what can be done in the next 5 to 10 years versus just the 2050 goal? Do we have a list of measures that we can be taking now? And I know that we are, but in a systemic way, and I haven't read the report, because it's still being formulated. Sure. So I'm wondering if we're thinking about that.
Yes. Commissioner, good question. So 2 parts to my answer. So from the public engagement, we heard this message of urgency. Hey, we can't wait to 2050. So in the EIRP modeling, we devoted 2 portfolios or 2 simulations to how can we get there in our community by 2035? What technologies would be in play? What would the associated costs be? So we looked at 8 different portfolio mixes, if you will, mixes of renewable energy over the time period. So we're studying what is the potential to accelerate, what is the cost and other impacts. And so that will be part of the deliberation, part of the public discussion later this summer. Oh, shoot. And in answering that, I forget the second piece. What was the full nature of?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I was asking sort of if we are keeping track of some things we can be doing right now.
Right. And so I believe that's what we will deliver with this clean energy roadmap, those actions that we can do now. And truth be told, the Tally 100 Technical Committee is beyond the planning part now. They're like, yeah, we kind of know what the consultant is going to lean towards, but we know across all these scenarios, there's some level of this, and this that we're going to need. So let's start tackling how do we grow our current interest in, say, rooftop solar, which is just north of, throw out a technical term, 5 megawatts. How do we grow it to a potential of 100 megawatts of rooftop solar? That's orders of magnitude. Our net metering program, yeah, maybe that'll get us there, but not at the rate we're going. So I think it's those types of recommendations, solutions, or ideas that we'll be bringing to the public this summer to kind of test and feel out. Is the community ready? What would it take? What information barriers or other barriers may be there? and then present to you all sort of that full picture. But it's to the core of your question, what are the things we can be doing right now with an eye towards the end goal, but those tangible things that make sense. That's what I at least hope to deliver.
Thank you. And then just last question.
Sure.
When is the most recent study we've done on the relative economics of energy and the cost that we're basing, because I know affordability is part of this, and I'm just wondering, and this might be a follow-up, I can send an email, but I'm just wondering what data we're using for that and how recent it is.
Commissioner, I'm not quite sure I know the nature of the question.
Well, thinking about, the affordability piece and how we are projecting what it's going to cost to produce and transmit the energy, where those figures are coming from, and how, I'm not sure I understand it myself, but I'm just wondering where these numbers are coming from for the affordability
so
piece.
in the modeling of our system, we used current data or data as of last year when the model started being built. But that's the mechanics of the grid. Then when we start to look at the assumptions, well, what's the price of solar energy per kilowatt? Where is it trending? I can compile the list of sources that are being used, but whether it's the economics of battery energy storage, solar, both rooftop scale and utility scale, whether it's home automation, electric vehicles, all of that has sources that I'll compile for you with perhaps the dates.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation and all your work. I know it's been a long project and it's an important one. Very much looking forward to seeing the energy roadmap. I think everybody probably is. I'm sure everybody's probably aware as soon as we have it, we're going to be asking, how can we go quicker? How can we move faster just because of the urgency? I had the pleasure of going to Aspen Ideas Climate in Miami this week. Leaders from all across the country convened and we're talking about what they were doing in their states and what they were doing in the community. And it's always, you mentioned it yourself, we own our own utility and people find that so unique and striking because we actually do have the power to move quicker, to do things that our communities want to see us do, where in other communities, local officials don't really have that ability. So I mean, that's just, I think we need to always put that in the forefront and celebrate it. We mentioned investor-owned utilities, FPL. They're writing legislation to try to stop rooftop solar and net metering. Here you are celebrating that we've been able to expand it, 300 applicants, and I think that's great. And so I think we always need to continue to remind people that we're in this together because we're a municipal utility, and there's a lot of value in that. One thing that stuck out to me in your presentation was the question about moving from natural gas for other services and feedback. And I just want to make sure when we look at those types of responses, we're not saying the community is not ready, but we're saying, how do we educate the community that we do need to move away, and what can we do? We've worked with messaging partners to try to sell a coal-fired gas plant. I'm certain we can convince our community that they need to not use as much natural gas and help us in this effort to move forward. So I hope we also look at internal policies like subsidizing the cost of gas piping. I know we continue to promote that. As new developments come online, how can we just eliminate the need for natural gas? Because if we're really looking to the future and getting there as quickly as possible, we need to bring natural gas to an end as soon as possible. But overall, I think you made a lot of great progress. I'm glad to see so much citizen engagement and look forward to the end result. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Great. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. One thing that came to mind, and I'll revisit what Commissioner Williams-Cox said about the neighborhoods and informing them about the solar panels. I recall as the neighborhood association president for my neighborhood getting an online survey. I can't recall if it was from the city or who it came from, but I completed the survey, and it put me in touch with a couple of companies that install the solar panels. And so I talked with the guy, and what he told me, I have 2 trees that sit near my house. One is an oak tree, pretty tall and pretty wide in circumference, and one is a pine. And he told me that I would have to cut down one of those trees in order to accommodate the solar panels. Well, I didn't want to do that, of course, but even when I looked into what it would cost to cut down those trees, it was, or the one tree, it was to the tune of like $2,000. And so my wife and I just said, no, we're not prepared to do that right now. But I also, in sharing that with my neighbors, found out that, you know, because we have a neighborhood where there are lots of trees, and they were in the same situation. You know, they had been told that, you know, they would have to cut down the trees in order to maximize the amount of solar that came down to their rooftop, and we were just not prepared to do that. So that was one of the impediments. And then, of course, like I said, even if we had wanted to, the cost of cutting down the tree to make that happen. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention and let you know that.
Absolutely.
And like I said, I don't know, I can't recall where that survey came from. It was legitimate, but it was just not feasible for us as a family to be able to do it when we looked into it.
Yeah, and that evokes a whole nother line of questioning, and that begins to look at, well, how do we value the thermal shading that those trees provide for your roof, the carbon sequestration and all. And that's what makes it certainly important as part of the discussion, but and there's trade-offs. So what this study, this EIRP study, tries to do is understand that technical potential. So technically, maybe solar could go there, but then we have to sort of ferret out, well, what's the viable, what's the real potential when you factor in these other pieces? And then what makes sense to us as Tallahasseans? Certainly, thank you for the comments.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
On point with what Commissioner Richardson said, you know, yeah, we own our own utilities and we could go faster, but the cost to our residents to do that, because I'm listening to him about having to take down a tree. One, you got to get through taking down a tree, you know, that sometimes folks want to nail you to because you're taking it down. And secondly, the cost of being able to do that. So we have to make sure that we look at these things judiciously to make sure that it's equitable for all of our residents to be able to do. And because we don't want to create a system of to be further divide of the haves and the have-nots.
Absolutely.
And so we've got to make sure that we go together as we go. And so those are some of the things that would cause perhaps us to go slower than we would like to, but we've got to make sure that we take everyone with us, because it won't do any good. You know, climate and solar, it doesn't work just in spots. You know, it's all of us. It's you know, regionally actually, but especially city and countywide. So that's one of the things that we have to consider, the cost to residents to be able to do some of these things. And it would take time and take perhaps some subsidizing to be able to get us all there. So just wanted to mention that.
Commissioner Williams-Cox, would you like to make the motion for option number 1, which is to accept the report?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Seeing no further comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously 5-0. Thank you. Great
Thank you
job.
all.
We're on item number 13.04. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item seeks your approval for a resolution to authorize the city manager or my designee to execute a grant with the Department of Transportation for the air cargo facility expansion at the Tallahassee International Airport. This is in line with your strategic priorities to expand the amount of cargo that comes in and out of Tallahassee to 22 million pounds a year within our 5-year strategic plan. This is good work by David coordinating with our DOT partners And I'd like David just to kind of explain the scope of this and you know, all the details of it and how it fits into our strategic direction.
David, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, appointed officials. Yes, this is a great alignment as we continue to chip away at our strategic priorities out at the airport. When I first took over back in 2019, I saw a need to really focus on the cargo aspect. So we focus on passengers, we also focus on cargo, and that's what this is doing, is putting that into play. This funding is for the expansion of the air cargo access road as we work towards greater cargo facilities. FedEx recently, about a year ago, leased the last remaining space that we have available for cargo at our airport. And so from that standpoint, this sets the stage for the development of additional access roads to current cargo, the FedEx area as you know it today, and future cargo, which we'll be developing as we continue to move ahead. If I just jump to can you go to the next slide? Okay, so the way it fits together is with several key projects. And so as we set the stage for additional cargo, FedEx is maxed out on our current cargo apron. The blue is what you're looking at as it relates to this agenda item. It develops the roadway infrastructure and network to current cargo and future cargo, but we've also leveraged the funding that we would receive through the state to also provide access to not only future cargo, but also to our future rental car service area as we continue to move ahead there. So this is all in accordance with our FAA-approved and FDOT-approved airport master plan. As we continue to track ahead, we're certainly very grateful and thankful to our funding partners with FAA and FDOT as well. The recommended action is simply to authorize us to move forward, accept the grant funding, and leverage it with our current facilities.
So moved. Oh.
Second. It's been properly moved by Commissioner Porter, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Let's get comment before we move forward. Do we have any public comment, Mr. Clerk?
No, sir.
Okay. Discussion, Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you. A great item, Mr. Pollard. So you were quoted in the paper the other day to say to get 2 hours early to get through TSA. So I did, and there wasn't a line, but I just wanted to compliment. I wanted to compliment the kitchen and the wait staff at the Live Oak Grill for a fantastic omelet. But good to see. I guess something's maybe moving a little quicker there, and great work all around. Thank you.
We certainly thank you for your frequenting the food, beverage, and retail part of the airport. We strive to do all that we can out there. So thank you, Commissioner. But again, that's part of our strategy. We never know when that equipment might break down or have problems. So we try to err on the side of caution and provide for a smooth and efficient travel experience for all our travelers.
Excellent, thank you. We got a motion on the table for staff recommendation moved by Commissioner Porter, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously 5-0. We're on item number 13.05.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me ask Jason Lawrence, our Director of Finance for Star Metro, to come forward. This seeks your authorization to seek a large grant, a federal grant. We think this is a bit of a long shot, but we believe we're well positioned based on the direction that you've given us, the priorities you've given us. And so we're seeking your approval of that to seek a grant of $23 million for our Star Metro. I'd like Jason to explain the details of this. Now, you recognize him probably from elsewhere in our government, but Jason's been at Star Metro for a bit. He's doing a great job. He's our finance director out there. He's filling in for Angela Baldwin today, who's not feeling well, but we're in really good hands. And so if we can take a moment and have Jason describe the details of this item.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mayor and Commissioners, very briefly, Star Metro's proposal includes a request for 6 battery electric buses, as well as 1 paratransit electric bus. And it also includes a request for funding for the construction of phases 1 and 2 of the fleet electrification infrastructure project, which is just another name for the charging equipment that will be installed at the Appleyard Depot. And that basically sums up the request. And it also aligns with the city's strategic plan as well as the clean energy resolution.
I'm sure the direction you're going to get is go forth and conquer. Go get that $23 million.
$23 million, go get it.
And it's good to see you back in chambers, man.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
All right.
Staff recommendation, Mr. Mayor?
Second.
Probably moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Any further comment? Seeing none.
Oh, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
I mentioned to the city manager the other day, I wanted to compliment, in her absence, Ms. Baldwin, and I hope maybe she'll hear these remarks and it'll make her feel better quicker. But I want to compliment her on the leadership that she is providing at Star Metro. If you realize, we've had several agenda items over the last couple of meetings that pertain to Star Metro, seeking funds or seeking new ways of doing things in our public transportation system. And I've just seen so much progress at Star Metro under her leadership and the staff that she has brought on board. And I just wanted to point that out to the public. I think we've got excellent leadership there, and we can expect, even bigger and better things as we move forward. As you recall, last meeting, we did the pilot project to expand our Dial-A-Ride program to make transportation more accessible to our citizens. And so I just wanted to make that comment publicly about the leadership that Ms. Baldwin is providing and the direction that staff is taking us in terms of our public transportation system.
Agreed. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
I just want to second that emotion and say that I encountered one of our Dial-A-Ride citizens, and I let her know, because I think right now they have to call in advance to schedule a date. And I told her that, as I understand it, you were going to be able to do it on demand and not have to schedule so far in advance. So she's ready for that on demand. So y'all hurry up, get that on demand ready, because there is a great desire to have that. So thank you all. I agree with what Commissioner Richardson said. Not only going for it, but winning and being awarded is it's like they say about the lottery. If you don't play, you can't win. And so I appreciate the fact that you're going after, and as the city manager says, a long shot, but it's a long shot that we want to take, because, sometimes you hit it. And so we hope that you'll be coming back to let us know we hit it. And $23 million will be coming into our cities. And those grant dollars helps us to do what we need to do without having to tax our residents to do those things and provide those services or hit our budget as we have it. So thank you. All of you for what you're doing, and certainly to Ms. Baldwin and her leadership and her team that in other parts of the city working to make these things happen. Thank you.
Motion to move forward with option number one has been properly made by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Seeing no further comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, passes unanimously 5-0. Thanks, Jason. We're on item number 13.06. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is our last policy item. It seeks your approval to authorize the amendment to the existing contract with High Street Solutions. They provide managed services for our PeopleSoft applications, financial and human resources. Tim Davis, as you know, is our Chief Information Officer, and I'd like him to give just a brief overview of what this request is.
Great to see you. Thanks, Tim.
Yes, thank you, City Manager Gold. This is to reflect what is in the RFP into the contract, give us 2 optional years in which we can exercise while we go out and do a competitive bid, and then look at another way in which we can enhance the services that are being provided.
Excellent. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
All right, let's open it up. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
I move staff recommendation.
For option number one.
Second.
Been properly moved by Commissioner Williams-Cox, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously, 5-0. Do we have any other business come before the City Commission today?
No, sir.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and keep moving forward with unagendaed speakers. Instead of making people sit for an hour and a half and wait on us, we got plenty of time. So, Mr. Clerk, let's move right into those citizens that want to speak on unagendaed items.
Thank you, Mayor. We do have three speakers at this time. If there's someone else who wishes to speak, there are cards in the back, and Mr. Lutz will be able to take those from you and bring them to me. Our first speaker is Donna Pearl Cotterell, and followed by Christopher Smith. As with our earlier speakers, each speaker has 3 minutes for remarks, and I will give you a heads up when you get close to 3 minutes, but the light will also turn yellow and then red.
Great. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Donna Pearl Cotterell. I live in the Bond community. And I was quite appalled, I'm going to say, the last commissioners meeting when Mr. Sims mentioned, or spilled the beans about those high salary increases. And I'm not mad at the folks who got an increase. I think some of them do a wonderful job here for the city. But I also heard from friends of mine that there were people in church praying for some folks who lost their job with the city. Some of them were laid off, and they were long-term employees with the city. I don't know why they were laid off, but it really reminds me of how, as Mr. Sims said, the least of these are not getting those increases, and those increases were more than some of their annual salaries. And I really hope that the city can take into consideration that there are folks making less than $15 an hour working for the city, and that when bonuses or salary increases are advanced, that we can look at folks who are not able to afford an apartment at the rates that rents are here in Tallahassee, and really hope that those increases come before, I think he said it was 2025, when that $15 an hour wage increase will go into effect. But please reconsider maybe moving that date up, because the rates of rent here in the city are really outrageous, and those living on $15 an hour or less can't afford to live here in the city. As you all know, I live on the south side, and I don't like to use the G word because I'm trying to save my neighborhood. But as we see the beautification happening, property values are going to go up. 86% of the people who live in the Bond community are renters. Those folks' rents might increase, and we know some landlords have doubled rents in the course of a few months. So please consider increasing the lower or minimum wage folks sooner than 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Next is Christopher Smith, followed by Irwin Jackson.
Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Christopher Smith. I reside at 1223 Camellia Drive. I'm coming here to speak to you today because I have made several requests through normal channels in the past couple of years to get the road of Camellia Drive repaired, replaced, repaved through digitally or through phone calls and requests through Public Works. I've just laid on deaf ears, so to speak. I've spoken to every homeowner and resident that resides on this quarter-mile strip of roadway in the Woodland Drives neighborhood, and I have a petition here signed by everybody requesting that we please get our road fixed. I'm a paramedic. I've been a paramedic for 10 years. I've driven on every road in the city of Tallahassee and for Leon County, and my road, 1 mile from this building, is probably one of the worst roads I've driven on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could make sure Mr. Smith connects, I see Steve. Steve Schaefer, he's our general manager of Underground. Mr. Smith, Steve can talk to you about that matter. Thank you.
And Steve, if you would you collect the petition? If he wants to make that a part of the record, I'll collect that from you later, Steve. Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker, please.
Next is Irwin Jackson, and then Whitfield Leland.
Dr. Jackson, name and address for the record, please.
Irwin Jackson, 1341 Jackson Bluff. During the past several months, I think it's been 4 or 5 months already, I've been coming here and calling for this commission to establish some very basic requirements, some standards for any individual who wants to become a registered lobbyist. And I've not heard anyone say they disagree that we don't need them, but I haven't seen any action. To go over, first, an individual who has been found guilty of a felony, including bribery, extortion, and fraud, should never become a registered lobbyist. Second, an individual who has admitted under oath that he participated in a felony must also not be allowed to become a registered lobbyist. For example, Gary Jordan admitted under oath in a federal trial that he was a member of Scott Maddox's crime family. He admitted that he extorted money from a local business, and he participated in bribing a city commissioner. Jordan's criminal history actually began several years prior to that, when he, quote, accidentally walked out of a department store with numerous watches that he had, quote, forgotten to pay for. When confronted by store security outside the building, Jordan blamed his young son for his failing to pay the watches. Currently, Mr. Jordan is a registered lobbyist, providing his spatial services to Crowder Excavating and Poulos Construction. I don't know why any business would need the corrupt services that Jordan offers, or why, as far as that goes, the Tallahassee Democrat continues to pay Mr. Jordan to write articles for the Democrat, or why the WCTV supports his TV news program. Finally, I would also want to add, and this is new, that any person who agreed to pay a fine resulting from a decision by the Florida Commission on Ethics or the Tallahassee Board of Ethics would be ineligible to be a registered lobbyist.
You're at 30 seconds.
For example, ex-Mayor Andrew Gillum, who paid a fine resulting from my filing an ethics complaint against him for accepting bribes from lobbyist Adam Corey, would also then not be qualified to be a registered lobbyist. Does anyone disagree with what I'm saying? Do we want to have felons being a lobbyist?
You're at 3 minutes.
I'm baffled. It's embarrassing that I have to come up here every 2 weeks and point out what I think is obvious. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Next is Whitfield Leland, and Mayor, that's the last speaker I have at this time.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. I have 2 comments. First of all, I want to say it's a lot of people that feels that the raises that the city gave out was unjust. I don't knock anybody from being paid for doing a job. And if that's the way you felt, Reese, I have no problem with it. But I do say this, is you have to take care of your circle. And the people that make those people that you gave a raise look good, they should at least come in at 15 or have a little bit more money. My second thing is I know I don't come up here and do this all the time, but I just want to give Chief Holmes and the patrol department some kudos. I actually have been on a couple scenes, a couple hectic scenes, and the officers are really communicating and explaining to the residents. And I appreciate Chief Holmes for being the liaison when it's an issue and being right there and being able to explain it and so we can get answers back to the community. So I just wanted to come up and say and let y'all know that the relationships that I've seen and lately has been great on building trust in our community as far as TPD. And I want to ask TPD to continue to doing what they're doing and making sure that the residents understand their rights, the policies, and diffusing situations properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment on non-agenda speakers?
No, sir.
All right. Colleagues, I'm looking at you. It's 4:55. Shall we keep moving and do commission discussion? Of course, I will come back at the end of the public hearing, just in case someone does show at 6 o'clock and still want to speak on an agenda. But Mayor Pro Tem, we'll start with you. Work our way down.
I don't have anything.
Okay. Commissioner Matlow?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to address the previous public speakers. I'm not against people getting raises, but I am against not having a minimum wage set at $15 an hour. We've had this discussion in our budget hearings over the course of the years, and we're always told that the budget can't accommodate it or taxes would have to be raised. But when we look for raises for higher level staff, we can do it without a budget increase. So my question is, how can we bring everybody's wage up within reason? Do we need to combine positions? Do we need to look at the vacancies that currently exist? But we need to get it done, and I'll bring that to the budget workshop. I just wanted to put that on the table. Secondly, I received an email from the firefighters, a big concern about mandatory overtime, and they provided a graph that showed mandatory overtime has essentially quadrupled in the last year, and I just wanted to understand that situation better, Mr. City Manager, and as well as figure out what the solution is.
All right, Mr. Manager, will you address the budget issues first and the MOU?
Yes, sir. Let me ask Deputy City Manager Barbara to come forward. I'll talk about the minimum wage, but she's intimately familiar with the firefighters item that you mentioned, Commissioner Matlow. But I think it's important to share that the commission took action 2 budget cycles ago to establish a $15 an hour minimum wage. And so that's been done. The distinction is that's for your workforce that's full-time equivalents of the OPS, those that are working in a full-time capacity. It excludes temporary workforce, which I'm told now 700 of about 785 employees work in our Parks and Recreation Department. And so those individuals, those doing those jobs of camp counselors, lifeguards, recreational aides, and that nature, the referees, that's where they work in Parks and Recreation. They work seasonally. They may work year-round, but for the most part, they work seasonally. And so that's where the minimum wage doesn't apply. So the minimum wage that applies there is the state-level minimum wage that went up last September. It'll go up again this September on its way to $15 an hour. So the individuals that have been even referenced today, when some members of the public have expressed a desire for them to make $15 an hour, they are. And in fact, last year, we're very, very appreciative. The commission authorized a $2,500 minimum. So there was an emphasis on the front end of the workforce scale to make sure we're dealing with that compression as new members of the workforce are coming on, or as we're adding that minimum wage. They don't stay at $15 an hour, in other words. So we've actually been able to move that original cohort of members that went from $12 an hour to $15 an hour. $12 an hour was the previous minimum, and we've been moving them along. In fact, in this year's budget recommendation, you guys have signaled your support for this, but obviously that'll be part of the continued discussion. We would again institute a $2,500 minimum. That would apply to about 40% of our workforce, and so that helps us deal with this, kind of emerging compression issue. You've heard our superintendent of schools talk about that compression issue in his workforce. We've been able to kind of get a little bit ahead of that, and so that's what's in motion. So the $15 an hour minimum is in place. All the individuals you saw come today working in our public works areas, that's the minimum that they would earn. And we're trying to be cognizant of a looming compression item. I think we're doing okay. It continues to be a priority. With the recommended raises for our workforce this year of 5% and the $2,500 minimum would be the highest we've seen in 2 decades in our workforce. And so certainly it's, the outgrowth of inflationary pressures, but we believe that is a priority. The commission has expressed that as a priority. So all very, very important. I think that's just helpful to kind of put a frame on it. The group in our workforce that is at the state level minimum wage is that temporary group, almost all of which are working in our Parks and Recreation Department. So hopefully that helps just add a little context. And we're prepared to talk about that again this year's budget, of course.
And just to follow up, Mr. Mayor, from my position, work is work, labor is labor. I don't want someone, whether they work in Parks and Rec, whether they're a lifeguard, no matter the position they're doing for the city of Tallahassee, I don't want them to think my labor isn't valued as much as a full-time employee. OPS isn't a distinction people make when they're going to pay their rent, when they're going to buy groceries. They're not saying, I should buy cheaper food because I'm just a part-time employee. If we're going to have a minimum wage and call it a minimum wage, it should cover everyone. Thank you.
So will you also touch on, number one, it was mentioned layoffs that took place at the city? I'm not aware of layoffs. What?
No, sir, there's been no layoffs. It's possible, I'll maybe connect this thought. When I made promotions to several jobs to address a number of areas, we were cognizant that we had to spend less money than we would have otherwise spent. So we found savings. There were two positions that were unfilled, if you will, that we eliminated to create savings, one of which was a long-term position we just simply couldn't fill. We'd been out in the market for a long time dealing with a construction manager, somebody that could oversee these significant large construction projects that we have coming online. We'd been unable to fill that, and so we explored internally an option. We found John Powell, which was our Director of Environmental Services and Building Facilities, and he, well-skilled, he was moved into that role. So we were able to delete that position that was unfilled. So we had an existing resource. That created a domino effect where other people were promoted to director, but that was one of them. The other one was, and you'll recall, in fact, you saw Dr. Kimball Thomas present today about our housing. That role was previously filled by Bena Ojatayo, and so we took the opportunity when she was promoted to the assistant city manager to bring synergy between the community services group, which was our Tempo group, TIFLA group, as well as our housing and sustainability. There was so much synergy between these two relatively small departments in terms of numbers of people. One was 40 members, one was about 12 members. So we pushed those together, which created an opportunity to eliminate that position and create savings. So ultimately, all the promotions that were made were less than the savings created. Nobody was laid off, though, but we were creative in the use of positions that existed in the resources. I think that's probably what's being referenced, but no layoffs occurred, of course. And Mr. Mayor, on the fire department item, Deputy City Manager Barber, she's worked directly on this. I think she could probably outline in terms of what the union has asked for. Largely, this is a management issue, not a union issue, but Cynthia has had a lot of discussion about it, and I know she's talked to the union president about it. If you wouldn't mind, I think she could probably define it and talk about the issue.
Yes, Mayor, Commissioners, we were approached, I in particular was approached by the union about entering into a memorandum of understanding for an issue related to mandatory overtime, and then another one related to their sick leave pool and wanting to expand the period of the pool. As you know, we try to get all the negotiations done in that process. It's a very hectic process. We strive hard to do that. But where there are situations that have operational impact, we are open to hearing those issues. So one of the things I did immediately was to talk to Chief Gaines to ask him if there was any negative operational impact if we were not to move forth on these on the memorandum of understanding to change the mandatory overtime. The overtime would be required regardless. But one of the issues is that when they work the overtime and in that same period of time they take time off like all other employees, if you don't work a full schedule, then your overtime is paid at a straight time rate. They want to change it in such a way that would require that they could take time off. So as opposed to being paid Straight time, when you take off, you would be paid overtime. That is an increase in cost to do that. So we would have an increase in costs, and we don't sign a memorandum of understanding for things that increased costs. In fact, we've been advised by the attorney that that's something that needs to come before the commission. But it was not brought forth primarily because it is not, the chief has described, and I have confirmed with him, that there is no operational emergency or operational need to make the adjustment. There would be someone working overtime either way, whether it's voluntary or whether it's compelled. They're compelled to do it mandatory because there is a need for it because of their staffing levels.
Excellent. Commissioner Mallow, you got questions?
Sure, thank you. Can you walk us through, I'm really trying to understand the underlying issue first, because, and I don't know if you saw a copy of the email and the graph sent, but what's causing such a spike in mandatory overtime? And when I look at it based on when our contract negotiations were and just what's occurred over the year, there just seems to be a sharp incline. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of why that is.
The chief is still working to fill some vacancies. They are not an extraordinary number of vacancies. Again, I believe it's a management issue. The chief would have to be able to speak directly to what kinds of particular management challenges he's facing, but as is in all of our departments, where there are vacancies and we have a need to provide the service, we have to provide it. And whether we get people to volunteer to work it or they're compelled to work it, mandatorily they have to work in order to serve the public. So I don't have anything other than covering the vacancies that they have. In terms of working overtime, when people work overtime, they may take off. That is an issue. That's a challenge in all of our departments as well, where if somebody takes off, the shift still has to be covered. And I do know in fire, one of the issues is that and this is really, I think at the crux of the matter, is when you work overtime, you would earn time and a half. But if you take off in that same period, you lose that. But they do take off, and it could be because of the workload. The volume of work. And that's not different from what our linemen experience in the electric utility during their peak season, or what the customer service agents work during what we call our student rush period, the storm periods, and other busy periods. It's just a matter of covering the shifts to serve the public.
Okay, thank you. So I'm interested in looking, or just following up with finding a solution here. If it's figuring out new ways to fill those vacancies more quickly, or signing the MOU, because while I understand we're able to deliver the services as needed, it's because those employees are showing up, and it's because those firefighters are working the overtime. And it just seems to be, we're looking at an overtime metric that we weren't really considering during contract negotiations. It's a new, unique scenario that seems to be happening within the last year, just based on what I'm looking at. So I'd be looking, I don't have a whole lot of information. You've actually enlightened me some, but I do think we need to do something. We need to find the resolution. We can't have firefighters just continuing to work more and more without either negotiating a better benefit for that, or figuring out how we're going to fill the vacancies. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Cynthia, this is an interesting issue. I think a lot of us did a ride-along recently with the fire department, and I kept hearing, and I heard it twice in 2 different times, a hiring freeze. I want to make sure that we are all on the same page. There is no hiring freeze at Tallahassee Fire Department, period, correct?
There's no hiring freeze in the government, period.
The money is in the budget to fill those positions, correct?
Absolutely.
So this is truly a management issue where we need to aggressively recruit the best of the best that we can to Tallahassee to fill those positions, correct?
Absolutely. And you've enlightened me to some things I need to talk with the chief about as well.
Has there ever been any direction from the manager or from you to not hire firefighters or anyone within the fire department in the past year and a half?
No, not in my 31 years in the government.
Right. We are trying to hire as much as we possibly can. So I agree. I think that this is a management issue that needs to be addressed head on. My interpretation from the time that I spent with the great men and women at the fire department was they believe that there is a hiring freeze in place. And I think that we need to, and I hope that this conversation will help dispel that rumor that there is not a hiring freeze, that we are trying to hire all the great men and women that are qualified to come and willing to work with the Tallahassee Fire Department. Are we currently operating under the agreements that both the union and the city during our bargaining procedures agreed to?
Yes.
Okay. All right. What other questions? Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few questions. I agree with what's been said. I also received the letter. I believe we all did. I believe one of the proposed MOUs, it stated in the letter, did not require an increase did not include a cost to the city. Are you aware of that, or?
I'm aware of the second request, which related to the sick leave pool. They wanted to reopen the period of time in which they could collect. Again, the driver for me, but I'm the one that had the discussion with them. The driver was whether or not there was a critical business need associated with the request. I don't have enough information, and when I asked the chief, nor does he have enough to be able to tell you clearly there'd be no cost associated with the change. We would, on the surface, you could say no, because it's just a matter of members donating leave between themselves. I believe it's incumbent upon the leadership of the union, and this is the discussion I had. They picked that period of time. There was an opportunity to market it and to encourage people to contribute and take advantage of the pool so that they could leverage the time that they had selected. But given there was no business need, but when you think of giving leave to a person who may not have it, or contributing leave is a person with absentee issues, whether or not there's any financial impact, I couldn't answer that for you today without full analysis of it. But when people are out, somebody does work, we do cover that cost, whether that's on overtime or not, would drive that cost. So I can't answer that, but I didn't, in my conversations with the chief, I didn't get from him that there was a compelling business reason to do it. And I thought it was something that the leadership could work on to encourage people to contribute, explaining why it's important to do it and how it helps their members to achieve it.
Okay, thank you. And can you clarify for me, were the MOUs submitted by the union or by Chief Gaines?
Was it submitted to me by?
No, to the city manager. I'm just wondering, was it the MOUs?
We don't enter MOUs with the chief of the fire department. So this would have been a request from the union.
Okay.
But no, even if it were transmitted through him, which I don't quite remember who sent the email, but it would have been a request from the union to management to enter into a memorandum of understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Look, Mr. Mayor. Sure, Mayor Pro Tem.
I wanted to go back and address the compensation issue for employees, because I think it's important that our employees, all of the employees of the City of Tallahassee family, understand that we recognize them when they do good work, not just in words, as we did today for the employees in our UUPI section and others, as the comments I made in reference to Ms. Baldwin at Star Metro. But we also have done it in deed as well, and that is with our commitment to reach the $15 per hour minimum wage with the City of Tallahassee. And as the city manager has mentioned, we've done that for all of our full-time employees. I'm proud of that. And it's something that we all should be proud of, that Tallahassee, the City of Tallahassee, is a leader in that regard. During the height of this pandemic, we did not let go one city employee. We maintained a full city workforce. That was a commitment, because there were lots of cities that did not make that kind of commitment. And I can tell you, many cities let their employees go in order to achieve a balanced budget. We didn't do that. We were cognizant of the fact that our employees were in that situation because we were living it ourselves, but also that they needed those jobs in order to be able to take care of themselves and their families. Currently, as the city manager again has announced, what we are proposing in next year's budget, a 5% increase across the board for full-time employees and a $2,500 minimum. Now, does that include temporary, part-time, possibly employees? It doesn't. But they do meet the state minimum wage. I think many of those individuals, lifeguards, part-time workers at our community centers, understand that that is supplemental income. I can't imagine that somebody would make their living off of being a lifeguard if it's not a full-time, year-round position. I can't imagine that. Most of the people that I know that serve as lifeguards, it's a supplemental income for them if they're a student, if they're working full-time somewhere else. And so I think they understand that if we aren't able to, within budgetary constraints, pay them $15 an hour, they understand that. But we're headed in that direction. We've made that commitment as well. But most importantly, we have to be fiscally responsible, and at the end of the fiscal year, have a budget that is balanced by law. And so I think what the city manager has proposed in the direction that we've given as a city commission and that we're headed with respect to ensuring that our employees are paid comparable to the work that they do and allows them to take care of themselves and a family, we have made that commitment and are headed in that direction. And so we show the value for our employees in word and in deed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. We're back on point. Commissioner Matlow has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up on that, I reject that assertion. Nobody comes to work because they don't need money. Nobody comes to work for fun. One of my first jobs, thankfully was provided by the City of Tallahassee. It was at Parks and Rec as a summer counselor at Jade Street Community Center. But what I did with my paycheck was I helped my mom buy food. I helped my mom pay the utility bill. So we shouldn't speak to anybody's situation. We don't know what 780 employees are doing with their paycheck, but to say we're a city with a minimum wage of $15, we're just not. We're a city with a minimum wage of $11. So we can either do it and set a real minimum wage, or we can just admit to what we are, a city with an $11 minimum wage. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to go back to the fire issue. I did do a ride-along, and as a part of the requirement for endorsement, and I just say publicly, I did not receive the firefighter's endorsement, but that doesn't matter. One of the things that I heard while I was there was that we were losing firefighters to Wakulla and to other surrounding areas. So I'm trying to understand what that meant and what does that mean competitively. Are we not competitive with surrounding fire departments when it comes to our hiring or what have you? And I hate to put you on, put you on the spot, but because I know the chief is not here, but that's what I was hearing.
Okay, Commissioner, I met about 2 hours last week with the chief and the deputy chiefs, and the topic of the starting salary for the firefighters was a topic of discussion. And I was told something fairly similar, that our salary was not competitive to some of our peers, as well as Wakulla, which they were mentioned as one of them. The paperwork that I received just a couple of days ago doesn't support that. So I haven't had an opportunity to get back with the chief to review it. But on the surface, when you look at the numbers, that doesn't support that. When I look at the turnover in the department and I look at the historical turnover, there's no trend of increased turnover based on what was shown to me. So I stand here today not able to answer every detail, every question in detail, but on the surface, that document that was provided to me, I want to say day before yesterday, does not support the ask of the department to consider the salary increase. That is something that you do during negotiations. Those are the kinds of things that come up. And again, we want to encourage the union to work, and of course, management does the same thing, to get all of those kinds of important issues into the negotiation process. We should not just be coming out of negotiations and bringing these types of issues as critical, mission-critical issues that need to be addressed when we just finished the process. So right now, I would tell you that the document doesn't support that.
So that my next question was going to be the fact that we're dealing with unions in negotiation periods. Is it abnormal to, after negotiations, to come back in the union to ask for additional things that were not asked for during negotiations?
Are you speaking of Tallahassee or just unions in general? Oh, in
Tallahassee, well, with the experience with our unions.
We had, over the past few years, we have worked to get out of the process of asking for things outside of the process, the memorandum of understanding. It weakens the negotiation process. If people come to the table and believe, well, I can half ask for what I need. If I don't get it, we can always go and ask and get something later. To strengthen that process, we should all walk into that process very strong about what we want. They should make particularly things like salary and staffing. That would not be new information. That would be something that could have been confirmed or verified and incorporated in negotiations. But there again, if somebody's willing to leave the government for a salary that's 75 cents higher or $1.25 higher, that to me does not represent that. But in many cases, the TFD's salary that I saw was higher than some of the peers that were provided. So I wouldn't understand why somebody would leave for salary. There may be other reasons that they may choose to go to another community.
Okay, and one other thing, just on fire, is that we all, commissioners, we received the letter today from the union. Did you all receive that letter prior to? Because I shared it with the city manager, the city attorney, and with yourself. So you all had not seen that letter prior to me sending it to you today?
No, I hadn't received it.
Okay. I think that it is important that we as commissioners understand where we are in the food chain. And I don't want to get caught up in the blender, if you know what I'm saying, that we're getting information that you all don't have. We're not going, by charter, we can't go down into the organization and tell you, you must do this, you must do that. We have to operate with the city manager to get things done, because it's his staff, you all staff. So I find it difficult. I find myself in a difficult position when I'm getting something that you all haven't seen, and you're the ones who can really do something about it. So that's why I wanted to know, did you all receive this or before I sent it to you? Because before I say or do anything, I want to make sure that you all know what's out there so we can work together to try to find, as Commissioner Matlow say, resolution if it's at all possible. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you too that some of the conversation that I had at the as a part of my screening was that there's a concern that the police department negotiations is yielding more than the fire department negotiations. And so I don't know what that really means, but I'm just sharing with you that that's kind of what I'm hearing, and I don't know if one has a, better negotiation than the other. I don't know. This was just my first time going through it, so I don't know what traditionally it has been. There seemed to have been some concern, too, about who the, what was the gentleman's name that you brought in for negotiations?
Mike Mattermore.
There seemed to be some concern about the choice of that individual. I'm just a community servant who got elected. Yeah, I don't know about all that stuff. So
Yeah, and a lot of these concerns are not brought to us. And a lot of these things can be handled at the management level. And when I say management, I'm talking departmental management. These are things that I'll need to sit with the chief and the deputy chiefs to talk about. These things should be handled within the department. Workload, scheduling, hiring, police, when they had issues trying to get people, they worked on how do we recruit people. But we are in an issue, a challenge again right now, just trying to get people hired in all of our departments. That's what we expect of our directors and our managers, that you figure out what industry you're in and you figure out what you need to do to get it covered, and you take care of your existing team. So all of this points to me that there needs to be a discussion with my management team to find out why these issues are elevating, these management issues are elevating outside of the department. Not that people don't have the ability and the right to do that, but if you really want to get the work done, start with the people who can make a difference, that you work with every day and should have a relationship with. So I'll follow up on those things. That's my commitment.
Well, I will say that it was a great experience doing the ride along. I actually ended up going out with the firefighters, and they are professionals. They do a great job, and they cook really good too.
Absolutely.
I had a great lunch over there and good conversation.
You have tomato gravy?
Well, it was some type of gravy, but you know, it was venison, and fortunately, I love venison.
Yeah.
So it was good.
But I'll regroup with the management team, and I'll do that. I'll make sure I do that tomorrow, and we'll start working on those issues that can be handled within the department.
Thank you. Back to the $15 minimum wage. I want to thank you for framing it, because I was thinking, I thought that the budget that we passed last cycle not only brought permanent employees to a $15 minimum wage, but we also took some temporary OPS positions and moved those people to full-time positions. I know because I heard from some of them in the grocery store and in other places about what a change this was, because they now have access to health insurance and benefits and pensions. So I know that was a Herculean leap that we did in last budget cycle. And I know that we're going to continue to look at opportunities to bring others on board. Now, our community is being faced with an Amazon coming to town and paying $15 minimum wage. And so we know that, like other businesses know, that in order to be competitive, we're going to have to step our game up and make some things happen. But that also means that, you know, in bookkeeping, is a double entry. You put it in here, it comes out here, or you take it out here, it has to come from somewhere. So we've got to make sure that we balance that. And I want all employees to know that I value the work that you do. I I came from working on farms to working in air conditioning, so I understand that everybody's work is valued, from the people who pick up the paper, people who do whatever. We value that, and I'm confident that we're going to figure out how to make sure that our employees are taken care of and adequately. So, we like Mr. Olson said, we had great spirit in this place, and now I don't know if this looks like it's gotten dark in here or something, like the lights went out or something, but let me lighten it up a little bit. On May 20th, the City of Tallahassee and the County of Leon will celebrate Emancipation Day. And that means that all city employees and all county employees will have that day off. But I'm hoping that you will consider it a day on, because we have a lot of activities that will be going on in our community to celebrate emancipation. And for those who may not understand why we celebrate emancipation, I suggest that you study your history. Don't listen to what others say about CRT. Study your history. Emancipation in this city is a big deal, because many, many years ago, there were 9,000 slaves here in the city of Tallahassee with 2,000 residents. Now, if that doesn't hit you hard, then, check your pulse. So on the day that General McCook came and read the Emancipation Proclamation at the Knott House, my ancestors left their buckets, they left their fields, and they began to celebrate. So since 1865, we have been celebrating Emancipation Day. And so on May 20th, this year is no different. We have many activities that are going on. The activities at the City of Tallahassee, through the Riley House and with the state of Florida are having, you'll be able to find this information on our website. But on Thursday, May 19th, there will be an evening of reflection right here at Parkview and Cascades. On May 20th, the actual day, church bells in Tallahassee. So don't be alarmed. Church bells will be ringing all over the place. It's not an Amber Alert. It's a celebration ring. Church bells will be ringing to celebrate Florida's Emancipation Day, which is what used to happen. And then at 10 a.m., there will be a Riley Center Museum Civil War commemorative service where we dress the graves. There's a program that I will be participating in. And then at 11:30, there will be the historical reenactment where the proclamation will be read as it has been in the past. We had to take a couple of years off in person because of COVID, but we're going to be back in person. There's going to be tours of the Grove Museum and other local history sites. And then there's going to be a great ball where people will be dressed in period dress on that night for the Emancipation Abolitionist Ball, given by the 2nd Infantry Regiment of the United States Colored Troops, who accompanied General McCook to come read the proclamation. All of this will be on the city's website. But also, that's our legacy celebration. We have some contemporary things that are going on as well. Soul of the South Side is in their 2nd year, and this year they're making it a week-long celebration to include a 5K run, fun run, and fitness expo on May 14th. And then there's going to be on the next day, on May 15th, there's going to be an inspirational community kickoff. And all week long, there are activities, Black on Black Rhymes, Working Class Wednesday, World Class Jazz, and so many, many more events. And you can find that list, that schedule of events at just Google Soul of the South Side, and you will see those events there. I encourage you to participate, learn, because there's an effort, there's a culture war on to keep you from learning. But here, we're blessed in our city to have a whole day off where you can learn what you want to learn. And I always want to know what it is that they don't want me to know. So I encourage you to join me and others to learn about Tallahassee as we approach our bicentennial. There are some things that happen here that are good, great, and there are some things that happen that were ugly. But we're wanting to celebrate our history, and we want to make sure that our children know our history. It's important for where we're going in our future. Our city can't move forward if we don't know where we came from. So I encourage you to participate, learn about Tallahassee, learn the history of who we are and who we're going to become. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for, well, either for you, Mr. City Manager, or our City Attorney. Mr. Jackson's comments earlier, can you remind me what action we took at our last meeting to review what legal action we can take with registered lobbyists and criteria for their registration?
Thank you, Mayor. My understanding of the direction was to bring back an agenda item that fully discussed these issues.
Okay, thank you.
So we are preparing an agenda item for you to consider.
Okay, thank you. I don't feel like I need to elaborate too much on the discussion we've had about the minimum wage. I think I've made my position clear, and I think it's amazing that we do have a $15 minimum wage for full-time employees, as we should. And I'll just express my support for a $15 minimum wage across the board. And then finally, I know it's several days late, but to the mothers, I hope everyone had a great Mother's Day. I was lucky enough to spend it with my mother. And so I hope that all of our City of Tallahassee employees and mothers in Tallahassee enjoyed their Mother's Day. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the moms out there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. One last thing before we recess. Next week, we've got a very important event taking place outside of the celebrations, we are going to be breaking ground on our new international facility out of the airport. This is a game changer. And, you know, when people criticize the city for not doing enough at the airport, yeah, well, here we go. Yeah. It's going to be great. Everyone's invited. Hope you'll come out and join us. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are in recess until 6 o'clock for the publicly noticed public hearing. For us, 15.01, 15.02, and 15.03. And then once again, I will call for unagended speakers that might have come after we had recessed. So if I can have your attention, please. We are on item number 15.01. Madam Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 15.01 is the first and only public hearing on ordinance number 22-0-14AA, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, amending Section 6 of the Charter of the City of Tallahassee to annex within the corporate area of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, upon adoption of said ordinance, property being situated in Leon County, Florida, near the intersection of Crawfordville Road and Capitol Circle Southwest, in accordance with the voluntary annexation provisions of Section 171.044 Florida statutes, providing for severability, conflicts, and an effective date. The recommended action is option 1, conduct the public hearing and adopt ordinance numbers 22-0-14AA.
Excellent. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No, sir.
All right.
Second.
It's been properly moved for the staff recommendation by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Any further comment? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously 5-0. 15.02, please.
Item number 15.02, the first and only public hearing on resolution number 22-R-08, a resolution abandoning the right-of-way known as Priscilla Lane located on the east side of Brighton Road between Orange Avenue and Putnam Drive in the City of Tallahassee, Leon County, Florida. The recommended action is option 1, conduct public hearing and adopt resolution number 22-R-08, thereby abandoning the entirety of the right-of-way known as Priscilla Lane based on the findings and recommendation of the Development Review Committee, the information contained in this agenda item, and any evidence presented at this hearing.
Excellent. Do we have any public comment on this?
No, sir.
All right.
Move acceptance.
Been properly moved by Commissioner Williams-Cox, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. See no further comment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously 5-0. We're on item number 15.03.
Thank you. Item number 15.03 is the first and only public hearing on ordinance number 22-Z-15, an ordinance of the City of Tallahassee, Florida, designating and including additional territory located on 2.63 acres at the northwest intersection of White Drive and West Tennessee Street between Dixie Drive and White Drive, as in the City of Tallahassee Commercial Parkway CP from medium-density residential MR1 on the official zoning map of the City of Tallahassee, adopted and established by the City Commission, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. The recommended action is option 1, conduct the public hearing and adopt ordinance 22-Z-15, thereby amending the official zoning map from medium-density residential zoning district to the Commercial Parkway zoning district, based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law of the Planning Commission, the information set forth in this agenda item, and any evidence submitted at the hearing hereon. Any ex parte disclosures concerning this item are available in the hyperlink included in the agenda item as published in the board docs system.
Excellent. Do we have any public comment on this item?
Robert Volpa is here with the applicant to answer questions. Otherwise, no speakers.
Mr. Volpe, thank you very much for being here. Seeing no other comments?
Number 1, Mr. Mayor.
Been properly moved by the Mayor Pro Tem for the staff recommendation, option number 1, seconded by Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox. Any further comment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously 5-0. Do we have any other items that were publicly advertised to come before us at the public hearing?
No, we do not, Mayor.
All right, colleagues, I said it earlier that, of course, we would call for any citizen that wanted to speak on an unagended item that might have just been planning on coming at 6, not knowing that we'd be done a little early. We'd give them the opportunity to speak too. So, Mr. Clerk, do we have any speakers?
We do have several speakers, Mayor. The first is Joe West. Joe West will be followed by Nita Davis. I'll remind speakers, as with the earlier portion of our meeting, you have 3 minutes for remarks, and there will be lights in front of the mayor, and I'll also give you a heads up at 2.5 minutes. Give your name and address. You may begin.
Joe West. My address is 241 Lake Ella Drive. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Mayor Daley, administrators. I come before you all this evening with 2 requests on behalf of Vet Events Tallian. First, we would like to request the city to please match the $5,000 grant that Leon County gives us each year. Fundraising over the past few years has become increasingly more difficult, as I'm sure everyone's aware. Second, and more importantly, we ask the city to help us with a backup plan for putting out crowd control barricades. This is a job that in the past has been handled by the Leon County Sheriff's work crew until last year. Let me give you a little background information, if I may. Volunteers have become harder to find since the onset of the pandemic. Last year, we were able to gather 10 adult volunteers whose job it was to keep the staging area in order. Unfortunately, the sheriff's work crew pulled the plug on helping us on Veterans Day because they had to be quarantined the day before the parade. We had to take the staging area volunteers and have them put out the barricades. Most of you were in the 2021 parade and know what a disaster the staging area turned into. While the parade lineup was disrupted and participants ended up in the wrong staging spots, that was an inconvenience. The real problem was that we were not able to keep a safety lane open. Had we needed to get EMS, fire, or police to respond to an emergency, we wouldn't have been able to. That, for us, is a monumental problem that we cannot afford to ever happen again. Anything that involves the risk and safety of participants or attendees is just not what we can handle. And this is personally on me personally, I failed to turn in the required paperwork for city support this year. I spoke with Jennifer, COT event coordinator, on May 3rd about this. She said she was going to talk to her supervisor to see what could be done about my failure to complete the paperwork. I haven't heard back from her yet, and Vet Inc. may have to pay for some city services this year that in the past have been donated. This will definitely put a strain on our funds, but we will adjust and adapt to do whatever is needed, once again, put on the best darn Veterans Day parade in the country. But we cannot adjust and adapt for a problem that jeopardizes the safety and well-being of participants, attendees, or first responders. And for that, we ask your help. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Mr. West, a couple of comments. Number one, I think that I'm looking at city manager, the appropriate venue for the formal request for $5,000 would be before the CRA. We have a large event grant pool of money that this would come from.
Okay.
I think that if you formally request, now I can't speak on behalf, I can speak on my own behalf, I would be very favorable to supporting that. That's just the right place to go.
Right.
So we'll make sure that you know when the next CRA meeting is and talk to the CRA Executive Director, Stephen Cox.
Okay.
Number two, you bring up a very, very good point in regards to the barricades. You are not the only one that has been affected with this. I do want to ask the city manager, this is big enough because we ran into this with Springtime Tallahassee this year as well, okay? As we're pulling out of COVID, it does seem that the sheriff's office policy hasn't changed. I mean, I don't know what they're doing over there. So if Vet Inc. has already been told that they were not going to have any assistance coming this November.
No, I have not been, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, to interrupt, but I've not been told that they won't be there this November, but we need to have a backup plan if they're not.
Okay, well, Joe, why don't we reach out first to the sheriff's office and see exactly what the plan is?
Okay.
Because if the sheriff is saying, nope, we're going to be there, we're going to do it, then we're in good shape. If the sheriff said, no, you need to put together a backup plan, you're right. That is a monumental effort that needs to be addressed. But I think the first thing is, and not just for the Veterans Day Parade, for the holiday parade, for the Springtime Tallahassee, for all of our parades, what is the sheriff's office policy moving forward? Can we reach out formally and see what's going on?
Yes, sir.
That'd be great. Joe, get all the paperwork in. I'm sure that our team will find it very favorable. We love our Veterans Day Parade.
I know you do.
But just try to get it in as soon as you can, and we'll follow up as well and get back to you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, may I comment on that?
Sure, that'd be great.
It's okay, Mr. West. Mr. West told me he was coming tonight, and I did ask for some background, and he brought it up that there was a deadline for city co-sponsored events, which comes along with a lot of activity that we would provide as a city at no cost or discounted cost. I'm told that may be of value as much as $17,000, so it's of material value. With the commission's blessing, we could consider that. It's missed the application deadline, but if the city commission was so inclined, I can bring back another item, or if you want to give me direction tonight, we could entertain the application.
Yeah, I'll make the, we're going to have a Veterans Day Parade, and we're going to have a great Veterans Day Parade. And so let's go ahead and I'll make the motion, take action in favor of Vedding's application for the Veterans Day Parade.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner
Williams-Cox.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
I just want to thank Joe for all the work that he does for our veterans. I attended the veteran stand down and I know, Joe, that you didn't do that, but just in terms of us recognizing our veterans and addressing their needs in the community, that stand down was tremendous. The number of services that they had available for the veterans there. Of course, our parade and what Joe and his volunteers do. My neighbor is one of those, Joe, Dwayne Meyer. Yeah, he lives across the street from me. I know he volunteers a lot at the American Legion and works with you on a lot of projects over there. But I just want to say how much we appreciate our veterans, and the mayor and I had an opportunity to do the veteran
honor flight,
the honor flight this year, and that was tremendous. I certainly plan to do that again. I'm from a military family, and again, I know all of us just appreciate our veterans, and when you look at what's happening now in Ukraine, and knowing that that's the kind of sacrifice that so many Americans were willing to make. I'm always reminded, Joe, of the saying that all gave some, but some gave all. And that's what I'm reminded of when I see what's happening in Ukraine now. And it makes me just appreciate more what our veterans did in the wars that our country has entered into, for us to be able to do what we do here today, to serve our community in a democratic form of government. So thank you, Joe, and to all the thousands of veterans that either have gone before us or are still living. We thank you for your service. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure. My motion on the table is to go ahead and accept the late application of Veddings for the Veteran Day Parade and move forward with assistance. Seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. Any questions? I'm asking you to do this sight unseen, but I'm assuming it's the same application that we've taken every year?
Yes, sir.
And there's no difference in our services are pretty standard, what we provide? Any questions? No? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes unanimously 5-0. See you at the next CRA meeting, and let's get you in touch, Joe, with the executive director. Okay. Our next public speaker.
Our next speaker is Nita Davis. We'll hear from Nita Davis and then Midori Okasako. Those are the only two remaining speakers I have.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming out. Your name and address, please, for the record.
I can't believe it was such a short wait. Okay.
Don't jinx us.
I know. It was, really, I found the four-leaf clover. Okay, I'm at the Southside Plaza almost every other day at least. And I talk to people continuously about a lot of things. And one of the things that we talk about is the English PUD. Okay, and they're just amazed. And I tell them who voted for it, and I also tell them, as I'm there, who also voted for the $24 million for the stadium. And they're amazed at that too. They're just not informed, no fault of their own. But anyway, so we talk. Like I said, I'm there every day. I just live around the corner. And we talk about the traffic that's going to happen when you put over 12,000 people on that property, the impact of traffic, schools, businesses. And I said, well, look at Southside Plaza here. But just think of the Village Squares, they're going to make over, you know, on the English property. And yes, that will take away from Southside Plaza. I have a neighbor that has 36 acres that butts up against the English property. He absolutely got no notification. He was shocked when I told him. And then 2 days ago, he got a letter from the Planning Commission that was dated 2021, so he got off an email to Valerie Perrine. And Mrs. Cox, you weren't on the Zoning Commission back in 2012, when, as you stated, probably you were, which I thought you would remember, when it was absolutely recommended that they were going to go ahead and give the okay for the Veterans Clinic so they wouldn't hold up construction. But going forward, this is in the minutes. I got not just the written minutes, but I have the recording. But going forward, they were going to have a complete hydrology, wildlife, everything, boots on the ground, because that property was so sensitive. And I want to know what happened between 2012 with that recommendation and now. And I can tell you one thing that happened. They got rid of Henderson because he was a stickler. Okay. And that was actually brought up by someone on the Planning Commission. That his name. I was surprised. They went, oh, I know who that was, Henderson. And it was. But I'm saying, what happened? Why didn't they stick with it, the recommendation? And they're piecemealing together. Well, we know why you piecemeal together property. No one's dumb. Everybody knows why it's done like that. And remember, none of you will be affected by this. None of you. Your neighborhoods won't be affected. You probably don't, none of you probably don't shop at the Southside Plaza at the Piggly Wiggly.
You're at about 30 seconds.
Okay, but these neighborhoods are absolutely going to be the endangered species. And if you think that they're not, I mean, I know you know they will be. So let's just pretend that we all know that they are going to be an endangered species. And a lot of rezoning is going to go on down the road. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Midori Okasako.
Thank you so much for coming to join us. Your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Midori Okasako, and I live on Red Maple Ridge. Oh, I'm sorry, 2776 Red Maple Ridge. On March 23rd, Tallahassee City Commission had unanimously voted on the English Property Amendment TRZ 210013 to include and to rezone the remaining 494 acres as PUD. Soon after, our group of residents near the English Property PUD and other Tallahassee residents received a letter from the representative of the English family. This letter of willingness states, in quote, they would consider an entity purchasing a portion of the English property in order to preserve some additional acreage from being developed. The English family is willing to review any offers from any local government, end quote. Upon receiving this courteous willingness letter, our group has defined the north and south parcels of the English Property PUD for possible land acquisition in order to protect and to preserve the existing vulnerable natural features of this majestic forest. For the north parcel, featuring a deep ravine with a springhead and a creek, we are applying for the state's Florida Forever Boundary Amendment. This amendment will be attached to the existing Wakulla Spring project, and Conservation Florida has agreed to act as the official applicant for this Florida Forever program. The south parcel, 3 fragmented open spaces, will be joined to create a sustainable natural habitat corridor that will run seamlessly south from Paul Russell Road to Tram Road and alongside Paul Russell Extension. For the south parcel, with wetlands, sinkholes, and slopes, the Northwest Florida Water Management District is currently reviewing the proposed area. If all procedural requirements are met favorably and approved by all entities in these 2 land acquisition efforts, we ask you, the City Commission, for your thoughtful consideration and willing support on 2 possible outcomes. First, if the land is purchased by Florida Forever at full appraised value, we ask the city to manage the Florida Forever boundary amendment, which will be attached to the existing Wakulla Springs project.
You have about 15 seconds.
Second, if the proposed land is purchased by Florida Forever at less than fee, we ask the city's Parks and Recreation to purchase the residual rights to make up the 20 to 40% not covered by Florida Forever offer. These two outcomes may also apply for the North Florida Water Management District land acquisition on the south parcel of the English parcel property.
You're at 3 minutes.
And for your information, we are scheduled to be meeting with the director of the city's Parks and Recreation. Lastly, this proposed network of existing natural habitats in the north and south parcels, along with the city's additional greenways weaving through future housing communities in this English PUD, will make a positive contribution to the natural ecosystem and to the health and well-being of the future and already established residential communities on the south side. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
No additional speakers, Mayor.
Anybody else here wish to speak? Seeing none, we stand adjourned.